I stood at this international bodybuilding competition, minding my own business and sipping my water, right when this American guy, Arnold McSun, stepped out onto the stage. Everyone lost their minds. Apparently, this guy's been juicing since he was 18, 17 cycles of gear, chest muscles thick enough to stop bullets, arms like 67 centimeters around when pumped. The announcer called him a legend with incredible drug tolerance, and I couldn't help myself. I shouted from my corner, "Drug-resistant sacred body," because that's exactly what he was, a fourth-grade pill-resistant constitution. With the right opportunities, this man could evolve into a ninth-grade tribulation-crossing holy body. I was genuinely impressed. My team leader's face went green. He told me to shut up because the foreigner couldn't understand me anyway. But I explained I was discussing the Tao with a fellow cultivator. All paths lead to the same destination, right? The way of drugs is still a way. This man carried the power of countless external pills in his mortal body, clearly extraordinary. I just wanted to know his refining method. Arnold spotted me and said in terrible Chinese, "Hey skinny boy, you're that natural Chinese lifter? I benched 260 kilos. How much you do?" I held up one finger. 100? I shook my head. 1,000? I shook my head again. Look, I once astral projected in my sleep and saw an old nascent soul ancestor shatter a mountain with one palm strike. So I told him, measuring strength in kilograms is small-minded. Strength is about cultivation, about enlightenment, about understanding heaven and earth. You pushed 260, sure, but did you understand it? Did you feel that thread of profound simplicity when your muscle fibers tore? Arnold looked like he wanted to die. But the competition had started. He went first, veins bulging like pythons, eyes bloodshot like a man possessed, 260 kilos, one clean rep. The crowd went wild. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the bench. No warm-up, no screaming. I just took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and began chanting the golden light incantation. Heaven and earth, mysterious ancestor, 10,000 energies return to root. Through vast kulpas cultivate, prove my divine power. The announcer had no idea what to say. My team leader, face buried in his hands, explained that I was chanting to communicate with heaven and earth's spiritual energy to make the barbell lighter. Everyone thought I was insane. Fair enough. But then I grabbed that bar and pushed, 300 kilos. Smooth as butter. No screaming, no bulging veins. The barbell moved like some invisible force was lifting it with me. Calm, steady, with this unexplainable Tao rhythm. Arnold nearly popped one of the injection abscesses on his back from shock. He screamed that I must be on drugs, demanded to know what I was taking. I sat up, brushed off my shirt, and said calmly, "I'm not on drugs. Impossible. Natural training can't push 300. You're right," I agreed. Natural training can't. But I'm not doing natural training. I'm cultivating immortality. I explained it simply. You mortals treat your body like flesh. I treat mine like an alchemical furnace. You train muscles. I refine my Tao foundation. You rely on drugs to break limits. I rely on enlightenment. One day I was hauling cement at the construction site, and suddenly it clicked. Cement and barbells are fundamentally the same thing. Both are heavy objects, and heaviness is just a rule of heaven and earth. Once you understand the rule, it can't bind you anymore. That 300 kilos. To Arnold, it was 300 kilos. To me, it was just a rule called heavy. I wasn't pushing iron. I was pushing the Tao. The whole venue went dead silent. Arnold lost that day, and he didn't take it well. That night, I was meditating in my room when I sensed a massive disturbance of medicinal energy from down the hall. Arnold had locked himself in his room with a suitcase full of vials, testosterone, trenbolone, stanozolol, IGF, the works. He was injecting at double his normal dose, then triple, then quadruple, eyes red, muttering about showing me what real power was. I walked over and knocked on his door. "Fellow Taoist, are you in there?" I sensed powerful medicinal fluctuations. "I thought you might be undergoing tribulation. Do you need someone to stand guard?" From inside, I heard a dying wheeze. "Get lost." "I did a quick divination just now," I said with genuine concern. "Your life palace has a malignant star. Tonight is not suitable for pill refinement." No answer. So I kicked the door open. Needles everywhere. Vials rolling across the floor. Arnold was passed out cold in the middle of it all. "Holy crap," I said, staring at the scene. "Fellow Taoist, you've gone into chi deviation. Arnold McSun, America's drug-resistant sacred body, the man who benched 260, collapsed among his needles and passed out. Next morning, I was eating breakfast. White porridge, 2 steamed buns, pickled vegetables, and my copy of the Tao Te Ching. My team leader ran over shouting that Arnold overdosed and was in the hospital, forfeited the match, and I'd won the gold. I chewed my bun slowly, opened my book to a certain page, and read aloud. Only by not competing can no one under heaven compete with you. My leader asked me to be honest. Had I ever taken drugs? I looked at him dead serious. Do you think a guy who works construction on his days off and spends 300 yuan on a gym membership can afford drugs? I can't even buy fresh protein powder. I only buy the near-expired stuff. Last week, I scored a tub with 3 days left on it, saved 80 yuan. I was happy the entire day, because that's the truth. No money for drugs, no money for coaches, no money for physiotherapy. All I had was enlightenment. And honestly, the underlying logic of getting strong on zero budget is basically the same as immortal cultivation. Not enough resources? Compensate with suffering. No shortcuts? One step at a time. If you can endure, you're a genius. If you can't, you're trash. I left the hotel that morning, walking to the construction site because I never take buses. Walking is also a form of cultivation. I did the math in my head. 800 for rent, 300 for the gym, 1500 for food, 120 for expired protein powder, 30 for phone. I could still save over 1,000. Enough for a second-hand Olympic bar and a few more tubs of almost expired protein powder. I was sipping my 1 yuan water bottle, thinking life was actually pretty good even without spirit stones, cultivation manuals, or a sect to protect me, when a 100-ton truck came flying at me. And I mean flying. Front end raised up, all 4 wheels off the ground, tearing through the air straight at me. My first thought, this must be a great fortune. My brain instantly connected the dots from every web novel I'd ever read. Anything with fortune in the name relates to destiny. Destiny means chosen one, and every chosen one must face tribulation. This is a heavenly tribulation. Heaven and earth are testing my Tao heart. If I survive, there will be a great opportunity. People were screaming and running. A lady selling pancakes abandoned her entire cart. But I planted my feet in a horse stance, sank my chi, pushed my palms forward, and faced it head-on. Come, let me see how much this tribulation of heaven and earth actually weighs. Then I noticed a stray orange tabby cat had jumped out of the bushes and was standing between me and the truck, hissing at it with its fur all puffed up. Junior, I roared, flicking the cat with my foot to safety 3 steps away onto the grass. It tumbled through the air and landed looking completely baffled. I stared it down with the authority of a senior cultivator scolding a reckless disciple. The path of cultivation runs too deep. You cannot handle it. Do not steal my opportunity. The cat, meow. It tucked its neck and bolted into the bushes. Satisfied, I gathered all my power and threw one mighty punch at the incoming truck. My wrist shattered instantly. But in that final moment before I got launched into the sky, everything became clear. That's why the spiritual energy in this world was so thin. That's why I trained for over 10 years and couldn't even reach foundation establishment. I didn't lack spiritual roots. I was just born in the wrong world. This world was the age of Dharma decline. The real cultivation world was somewhere else. And this truck wasn't a heavenly tribulation. It was a teleportation array. Brilliant, I shouted. And then I got absolutely obliterated. Pain. Every single inch of me was screaming. Then I opened my eyes and saw a dusty wooden ceiling with sunlight leaking through cracks in the wall, and a tiny baby hand. My tiny baby hand. Well, I thought, didn't survive the heavenly tribulation after all. 10 years of Tao foundation, gone in an instant. But honestly, I bounced back pretty quick. Reincarnation is the kind of opportunity cultivators in my previous life would have killed for. This new body had way more potential. Start from scratch, temper it from childhood. Who says I can't forge an eternal, indestructible body? A woman in rough cloth picked me up and started talking in some language I didn't understand. Then she started breastfeeding me. I froze. Look, the welcoming spirit liquid was mediocre quality at best. Barely any spiritual energy. But when in Rome, right? I closed my eyes, accepted my fate, and got to work. 12 years flew by like nothing. I was leaning against a crooked tree behind the village. doing my internal meditation. Couldn't actually see anything inside myself, but the routine kept me centered. I'd spent 12 years building this body's foundation. Bones set, meridians open, blood and chi flowing strong. The Tao foundation of this flesh vessel was solid. Problem was, the spiritual energy in this world was basically non-existent. Worse than the Dharma decline age. Forget foundation establishment, I couldn't even sense chi. But here's the thing I figured out. There are 10,000 methods, but only one Tao. Spiritual energy is Tao. Blood and chi are also Tao. If I can't feel spiritual energy, I'll just refine this physical body until my blood and chi reach their absolute peak. Then I'll prove the Tao through pure strength. Same plan as last life, honestly. Worked out pretty well until that truck showed up. Xiaotian, my mother called from behind. The Lord's Knights are here to collect taxes. You're 112 this year, so you count as ahead now. Come back. Yeah, 112. That's how age works here apparently. Don't ask. I flipped off the tree branch and landed with bent knees, sinking my center of gravity. Part shock absorption, part breathing exercise. Mom stopped noticing my weird moves about 10 years ago. At the village entrance, a few dozen people had gathered under the old locust tree. When Mom and I walked up, the crowd parted for me automatically. Not out of respect, more like reputation. I'd built quite the resume in this village. Born sitting cross-legged and staring into space. Parents thought I was brain damaged. Almost got designated the official village idiot. At a year and a half, I chased the neighbor's big yellow dog around, trying to tame it as my mount. At 4, I started fighting. By 11, every kid in the village combined couldn't take me. The adults looked at me with this complicated mix of awe and pity. Good seed, born in the wrong dirt. The tax collection party arrived. 2 knights in chainmail with the Lord's crest on their surcoats. Horses tall and heavy-hoofed. Behind them, a carriage, then some attendants and soldiers. The village dogs tucked tail and hid. The lead knight reined in his horse and surveyed us peasants from above. I leaned against a small tree at the back of the crowd and studied him. His stance, how he gripped the reins, the angle of his sword at his hip. My eyes landed on a scar running from his ear down to his collarbone. Heavy killing aura, I assessed internally. At least 10 life or death battles. His blood and chi are declining, but the fighting spirit in his bones is still alive. I paused, then added, shame he was born in a Dharma decline world with no cultivation techniques. In a proper cultivation realm, he'd be at least a 3rd-level body refining outer disciple. I clicked my tongue in sympathy. Poor guy didn't even know what he was missing. The knight announced they weren't collecting taxes this year. The crowd buzzed with disbelief. Then he dropped the real news. The Lord's family was returning to the fief, and the young lady needed companions. They were selecting children around 112 to serve as attendants. Top performers could be promoted to squire knights. The mood shifted instantly. Attendant sounded a lot like selling your kid, but squire knight was basically the only ladder a peasant's son would ever see. Mothers started shoving their children forward. I didn't move. I was watching the carriage. The curtain lifted slightly, revealing a girl's face. Pale skin, delicate features, eyes full of the restless boredom of someone who'd been cooped up way too long. She scanned the crowd of dirty peasant kids, looked disappointed, and dropped the curtain. My mother's voice came softly, Xiaotian. Do you want to go? Her expression was complicated. Hope, reluctance, and a look that said, I know exactly what you're thinking. Dad just stood there silently and finally said, then go. Don't embarrass us. The knight started inspecting the kids who'd been pushed forward. His expression got colder with each one. After 7 or 8, he walked to the carriage and spoke quietly. The curtain lifted to reveal an old hand with silver gemstone rings. A tired, worldly voice drifted out. That's it. This is the first village, sir. Don't bother looking. These mud farmers' children can't even stand straight. Tell the Lord we'll bring people from the capital, but that would take at least 2 weeks. Then 2 weeks. Wait, that was me. Every head turned. I walked out from the back of the crowd. Not fast, not slow. Even steps, stable center of gravity. 12 years of body training made that automatic. I stopped 3 paces from the carriage. Close enough to be noticed, far enough not to spook the guards. Calculated, obviously. The knight's hand went to his sword. Whose kid are you? My name is Gtion Jack, I said, lifting my chin slightly. and looking past the knight straight at the gap in the carriage curtain. 12 years old. Son of old Jack the tenant farmer. I paused. I want to be an attendant. The curtain opened, and an old man leaned out. Snow-white hair combed perfectly, face carved with wrinkles that each spelled discipline. Dark gray robes, silver brooch at the collar, eyes dissecting me like I was a specimen. Tenant farmer's son. Yes, what can you do? Fight. A couple soldiers almost burst out laughing. The old steward blinked, then narrowed his eyes. You know that fighting in the Lord's manor gets you whipped? Depends who you're fighting, I replied evenly. Fighting enemies is called combat. Fighting allies is called fighting. The steward's gaze sharpened. He looked me over again, dusty rough clothes, grass sandals worn fuzzy, but decent build, and eyes that didn't belong to a farmer's son. Too still. Like deep water you couldn't see the bottom of. You said you want to be an attendant. Why? I thought about it and gave them an answer they could actually understand. Because I want to be a knight. And for a tenant farmer's son, this is the only path. Honest answer. Too honest for the steward to find fault with. He chuckled. A knight? With those stick-thin bones, you probably can't even hold a sword steady. I didn't argue. Instead, I turned to the scarred knight on horseback. Sir, could I borrow your sword to demonstrate? The knight frowned. Nonsense. Give it to him. The steward's voice lost half its laziness, replaced by something sharp and interested. Let him try. The knight hesitated, dismounted, and handed over his longsword. Standard knight's blade, nearly a meter including the hilt. Way too long and heavy for a 112-year-old kid. Hold it steady, boy. He didn't finish. The instant I gripped that hilt, something shifted, like pulling a rusty blade from its sheath and finding the edge still razor-sharp. I lifted the sword one-handed, flicked my wrist. The blade cut an arc through the air with a whisper of wind. Then I settled into stance. 2 hands on the grip, feet shoulder-width, knees bent, center of gravity low, sword tip angled 45 degrees toward the ground. No wasted movement. Nothing extra. The knight's expression changed completely. See, what I had was called frame, the hardest thing for any martial artist to develop. Whether your frame is right or wrong, any experienced fighter can tell at a glance. The steward didn't know swordsmanship, but he could read the knight's face. Well, 2 seconds of silence. Then, he's a natural. I returned the sword calmly. Didn't even breathe hard. I turned back to the steward, voice steady. Sir, I only need 2 things, a training ground and opponents. Then I let just a little bit of edge show. Stopped hiding it. Let them feel what I'd been holding back. That state from my previous life, the faintest brush of what cultivators called extreme intent, boundless freedom. As for the young lady's safety, these knights you brought? Within 10 steps, they may not be able to stop me. Yeah, that was cocky. Insanely cocky. The villagers all thought I'd lost my mind. The knights and guards started reaching for weapons. Mom broke free from Dad and threw herself in front of me. Sir, Xiao Tian is still young. He doesn't know what he's saying. It's fine. The steward wasn't angry. He was just staring into my eyes. And what he saw there wasn't the recklessness of a kid. It was the certainty of someone who'd already seen the view from the top of the mountain and was now climbing back up from the bottom, knowing exactly where he was going. He rubbed his gemstone ring and finally spoke. You're interesting. The young lady does need a companion. But I should warn you, a companion means keeping the young lady entertained. She tells you to do something, you do it. Dancing, chess, reading, singing. Can you handle that? I went quiet for a second. Singing's not great. Dancing either. Then what can you do? I thought about it and said something nobody expected. I can make it so the young lady can go wherever she wants on the fief. Walk outside whenever she feels like it. No more being stuck inside a carriage. Something bumped inside the carriage, like someone accidentally hit the wall. The curtain twitched, then quickly settled back. The steward looked at me, the corner of his mouth doing that thing where someone's trying very hard not to smile. He tapped his cane on the carriage shaft and made his decision. Fine. You're in. He turned to the knight. Register him. Cancel the other villages. Head back to the manor. But sir, the other villages. Skip them. He waved his hand and settled back into the carriage. Send a knight to tell them taxes are waived this year. That's enough. A child like this. One is plenty. He gave me one last look, something unreadable in his eyes. Get on, boy. I turned around and looked at my parents in the crowd. Mom stood there, lips trembling, eyes red, but she didn't cry. She just nodded hard, over and over, like she was saying, "Go, don't look back." Dad waved his hand and smiled for the first time in forever. I nodded back at them, turned, and walked to the carriage. I didn't look back. The carriage started moving, wheels grinding over the dirt road, kicking up yellow dust. I sat on the tail board with my legs dangling, watching the village shrink into a gray smudge behind me. I looked down at my hands. Thin, bony knuckles. This world may not have spiritual energy, I told myself. But no spiritual energy doesn't mean you can't cultivate immortality. 10,000 methods, one Tao. If I can't sense spiritual energy, I'll refine the physical Tao foundation first. I clenched my fist, felt the tiny click between my finger bones, and looked up at the dirt road stretching into the distance. Push blood and chi to the absolute peak. And who says I can't break open the heavenly gate? The village was 3 days by carriage from the Lord's manor. 3 days of but getting absolutely destroyed by a wooden plank. But my face stayed calm. A cultivator does not complain about his tailbone. I spent those 2 days doing what any reincarnated immortal would do. Threat assessment. 2 knights, 5 attendants, 7 soldiers, 1 old steward, 1 young lady, her personal maid, and me. The knights were legit. The lead one, Red, was in his 30s with an old arrow scar across his left cheek. The younger one, Alan, barely talked but dismounted smoother than Red. Definitely someone who'd licked blood off a blade before. The soldiers were fine. Freeborn commoners' sons who could march and follow orders. In a real fight, I figured I could drop any 3 of them in 10 breaths. The attendants just handled horses and luggage. Not even worth thinking about. The ones I was really watching were Old Man Gregory and the mystery girl behind that curtain. Gregory had been a steward for over 30 years. The kind of guy who'd seen everything, thought 3 steps ahead, and couldn't be fooled easily. I could feel him watching me through the carriage curtain, at least 10 times in 2 days. Testing me, measuring me. Classic elder generation scheming. And the young lady. I'd barely heard her voice. But that bump against the carriage wall when I said I could let her go outside freely? That wasn't accidental. That was someone whose body reacted before her brain caught up. Someone who wanted to hear what I said. Interesting. On the second day, we stopped at a relay station to swap horses. I hopped off to stretch and went to the well for water. Some merchants were sitting nearby eating lunch, chatting in an accent I could barely follow. And that's when my entire worldview got rearranged. Heard the werewolves up north are acting up again. Werewolves are nothing. The goblin nest out east is worse. Raided my cousin's caravan last month. 3 guys dragged into a cave. Found nothing but bones. These monsters are getting bolder. Where's the church? The church. The Holy Knight Order's main force got sent west to fight the Demon King's army. Only big cities get protection now. Out here in the boonies, you're lucky to have a mid-rank mage stationed anywhere nearby. I stopped pulling water. Werewolves? Goblins? Mages? Demon King? I slowly straightened up and stared at those merchants. They were just casually eating like they hadn't just detonated a bomb in my brain. I set the water ladle down, stood there in silence for several seconds. Oh, so this world has monsters. This world has magic. And I, a reincarnated cultivator, spent 12 years punching village kids in the middle of nowhere without knowing any of this. Well, no, I probably should have known. Those, Hero Slays the Dragon, games people played. Turns out those were based on real things. I was just so busy enjoying fights that I never bothered to think about the bigger picture. I looked down at my hands. Thin, bony, veins visible under the skin. 12 years of training from infancy. I'd assumed this world was basically medieval Europe. No spiritual energy, no cultivation, just raw physical strength. Wrong. This world had magic. And monsters. And presumably magic systems I could have been learning this entire time. Damn it. Wasted 12 whole years. I almost never swear. That's how upset I was. I took a deep breath, stabilized my Tao heart, put on my poker face, and walked back to the carriage like nothing happened. When I climbed in, Gregory was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. I sat in my spot, stayed quiet for a long time, and then finally asked, "Sir, does this world have magic?" Gregory opened one eye and looked at me. A flash of surprise, then understanding. "Your village really is in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? No magic tower within 100 miles, no monster nests, no church priest in 30 years. The tax collectors barely bother going out there. He paused. No mage would set foot in a place like that. No magical resources, no monster bounties. Can't even recruit magic apprentices. So yes, you genuinely didn't know? I said nothing. He looked at me with this little smirk, like watching a country bumpkin walk into the big city for the first time. Don't worry too much. Most people in this world can't use magic either. More than half the knights in any order are pure martial fighters. Magic is about talent. Talent, whether you're born with magical perception, elemental affinity, the ability to condense magical essence, all determined at birth. He closed his eyes again. Your combat talent was recognized by a veteran knight. That already makes you a rare find. Don't overthink the magic thing. I didn't respond. I leaned back against the board, watched the scenery roll by, and kept my face perfectly neutral while my brain ran at maximum speed. Magic, magical perception, elemental affinity, essence condensation. Sounded a lot like cultivation talent. I mentally flipped through every web novel I'd ever read. Magic, battle chi, immortal cultivation, superpowers, doesn't matter what you call it. The underlying logic is always the same. Some people have the gift, some don't. Some can sense it, some go their whole lives never knowing it exists. I'd been in that village for 12 years and never sensed anything supernatural. Was that because the village truly had zero magical resources? Or because I simply didn't have the talent? If it was the second option, that was a problem. Last life, I built everything from nothing. 10 years of grinding, took a heavenly tribulation head-on. But that was body cultivation, muscles, bones, blood, and chi. A path anyone could walk. If magic was truly decided at birth, I wouldn't even get through the front door. I closed my eyes and shelved the question for now. No rush. Get to the Lord's Manor first. Figure out how magic actually works in this world. If I have talent, train it. If I don't, find a way to upgrade my talent. My previous life's web novel library had plenty of methods for that. The carriage arrived on the third afternoon. I jumped off the tailboard and looked up. Not the castle I'd imagined, more of an estate. Gray-white stone walls, pointed tower roofs, neatly trimmed hedges all around. 2 guards at the gate snapped to attention when they saw the carriage. Gregory climbed out, straightened his collar, and said, "Follow me. You'll meet Lady Alina first, then we'll arrange your quarters." Haven't I already seen her? I was confused. But then I figured this was probably some noble formality thing, so I shut up and followed him through the gate. The stone path inside was clean enough to see your reflection. Flower beds lined both sides with plants I couldn't name. The air carried a faint scent of grass and wood. I took a deep breath. My feet slowed slightly. This scent was different from anything in the village. Not floral. It was crisp, with a hint of coolness. In my previous life's web novels, certain rare spiritual herbs and heavenly treasures would emit the scent of spiritual energy. Of course, the far more likely explanation was that I'd just never seen these particular flowers before. But what if? I memorized the location. Something to investigate later. After walking for a bit, Gregory stopped in front of an ornately carved wooden door and knocked twice. "My lady, I've brought him." A girl's voice came from inside. "Come in." The door opened into a sitting room bigger than my entire house back in the village. First thing I noticed was the embroidered tapestry on the wall. Some family crest, stitching so fine it probably cost more than everything my parents owned combined. Bookshelves by the window packed with leather-bound volumes. Gold lettering faded from actual use. Fireplace crackling away, making the whole room toasty warm. And there she was, standing by the window with her back to me. She was holding a short staff inlaid with a gemstone. Dark wood, blue stone glowing faintly at the tip. Light blonde hair in 2 braids with ribbon bows. She turned around. I recognized her immediately. The curtain peeker from the carriage. About 112 years old, face like a porcelain doll, skin so pale she'd clearly never been introduced to sunlight, lips a faint pink. Light blue dress with embroidered collar and cuffs, white lace socks, little black leather shoes. Very put together. Very noble. But her expression wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined all sorts of spoiled princess types. The tantrum thrower. The, "I'm better than you, Ice Queen." Nope. She was just bored. Not regular bored. Deep in the bones, seen everything, nothing matters anymore bored. Her gray-blue eyes had this fog over them like no emotion could get through. In cultivation terms, This was decline of the heroic spirit. Concerning, honestly. She looked me up and down. Eyes paused on my dusty clothes, swept over my crooked grass sandals, landed on my face. 3 seconds total. Not even properly judging me. More like confirming whether I existed at all. She looked up at Gregory. Just one? One should suffice, my lady. You can try him out, and if he's not suitable, whatever. They're all the same. No anger. No pouting. Just pure, flat acceptance of a mediocre outcome. She walked to the sofa, sat down, skirt fanning perfectly across her knees, a movement she'd obviously rehearsed 1,000 times. She pointed at the chair opposite. Sit. I didn't sit. I just stood there, looking at her calmly. The firelight danced across my face and stretched my shadow long across the floor. She raised an eyebrow. What? Don't know how to use a chair. I do. But in my village, children stand when adults talk. I wasn't sure if the same rules apply here. She snorted a laugh, then immediately killed it, like she was annoyed at herself for being amused so easily. The rules here are simple. When my father, Viscount Pompey, isn't around, I am the sky. My rules are the rules. She said it casually, but I could tell she was someone used to giving orders and having them followed without question. I sat down. Name, Gition. Age, 112. Skills, fighting. Her expression was an exact copy of Gregory's from 3 days ago. Brief surprise, then narrowed eyes. Fighting? She repeated it like she wasn't sure her ears worked. Do you know what I need a companion for? Entertainment. And you think fighting is entertaining? Now this was my area of expertise. I patiently explained. That depends on how you fight. If you just stand still and let someone hit you, sure, that's boring. But if it's a proper exchange, I don't know how to fight. I can teach you. Silence. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. Nothing but the fireplace crackling and some bird calling outside the window. Gregory coughed behind me, clearly trying to signal that I should maybe watch my mouth. Apparently, not many people talk to the young lady like this. But she wasn't angry. She looked at me, her little black shoes swinging gently below the sofa, and some of that fog in her eyes cleared just a fraction. Underneath it, buried deep, was a tiny flicker of curiosity, like a fish swimming under a frozen lake. You could barely see the outline, and if you got too close, it would vanish. You've got nerve, she said. The last person who talked to me like that is currently peeling potatoes in the kitchen because they said something wrong, because she was boring. Boring people aren't worth keeping around. She stood up and walked over to me. Her skirt swayed with each step. She stopped right in front of me, looking down. At this distance, I could smell a faint scent on her, something like herbs mixed with fireplace smoke. You'd better not bore me. I looked up at her. From this angle, I could see the exact color of her eyes, pale gray blue, clean and cold. I won't, I said, dead serious. She stared at me for a few seconds, then turned and drifted back to the window. Same unhurried pace, but with something slightly different about it. She spoke to Gregory in that careless tone of hers. Give him a room, close to mine. Then she added, starting tomorrow, he takes me outside. Gregory hesitated. My lady, outside is. Her voice got impatient, like this was an argument she'd had 100 times. I know. It's not safe. That's why I need someone who can fight. Isn't that why you brought him? Gregory opened his mouth. He probably wanted to say that not safe was an understatement. Werewolves, goblins, bandits, deserters. What good was one 112-year-old boy who could punch? But he said nothing, just nodded. In this household, the lady's word was law. When the Lord was away, she was heaven itself. Her rule, everyone's rule. I stood up and followed Gregory out. At the door, her voice came from behind me. Oh, you said you could teach me to fight? I stopped and turned around. She was leaning against the window. Firelight cut sharp angles across her face. That blue dress pulled on the carpet, collar embroidery flickering in the shadows. She was still holding that staff, the gemstone rotating its soft blue glow. Yes, let me tell you something. She raised the staff and pointed it at me. Then she said something in a language I didn't understand. Short, sharp syllables with a strange rhythm. Not normal human speech, more like some ancient, innate chant. A ball of fire bloomed out of thin air. Half a foot above the staff's tip, a fist-sized fireball materialized from nothing. Orange-red light instantly flooded half the room. Heat blasted my face, carrying a faint sulfur smell. Her face in the firelight looked almost unreal, those gray-blue eyes reflecting the dancing flames. She tilted her chin up with a little smirk. Humph. What good is fighting? Mages are the most powerful. My pupils contracted hard. I stared at that fireball like I was trying to swallow it through my eyeballs. My brain went into overdrive. Every web novel I'd ever read came crashing through like a dam breaking. Fireball technique. No. Wait, that's not a technique. That's externalized spiritual power. Only chi refining stage cultivators can do spiritual energy materialization, her condensation speed, equivalent to chi refining stage. Foundation is shallow, but the method is correct. So that's how it is. The magic of this world is a variant of spiritual root cultivation. Magical power is spiritual energy. Magical essence is the world's spiritual chi. Mages are cultivators. Different names, identical underlying logic. My lips were trembling. I was muttering under my breath, quiet enough that only I could hear. Samadhi, true fire. Spiritual energy materialization. Refining essence into chi. Her fireball hasn't even purified the chi yet. It's barely a mortal flame. Doesn't even rank as first grade. But the path is correct. This path is correct. Gregory frowned nearby. Couldn't hear what I was mumbling. The girl noticed my reaction, though. She probably thought I was awestruck by her magic, because her smirk deepened. She waved the staff, making the fireball bounce playfully. Well, still think fighting is useful. I took a massive breath and physically wrestled that tsunami of excitement back down into my chest. My face went calm again, but the fire in my eyes didn't die. It just sank deeper where nobody could see it. I wanted to ask so many things. How did you learn this? Who taught you? Can I learn? But Gregory tapped my shoulder and nodded toward the door. I had to leave. As the door closed behind me, I heard her laugh quietly. Short, light, almost to herself. But I had zero bandwidth for that laugh. My brain was entirely consumed by the fireball. Walking down the corridor behind Gregory, my thoughts were racing. Magic. This world actually has magic. And it runs on the exact same logic as immortal cultivation. Externalized spiritual power, elemental affinity, divine sense manipulation, just different labels. So the question is, can someone without magical perception use the martial path to Tao method to cultivate magic? Or is there a way to artificially upgrade spiritual roots? My previous life's web novel library had at least 17 methods: marrow cleansing pill, spirit opening fruit, 9 revolutions tendon changing scripture, heavenly demon disintegration technique. No rush. First figure out this world's magic system completely, then see if I can graft cultivation methods onto it. And if nothing works, I clench my fist. Then I prove the Tao through pure physical force. No spiritual roots? Then I refine this body to the absolute limit and simulate spiritual power with blood and chi. Last life, I tanked a truck-sized heavenly tribulation head-on. This life, I'll achieve sainthood through flesh alone. Gregory led me to my room. Small but clean, a bed with cotton sheets, a desk with a water jug, a half-open wardrobe with spare clothes. Way better than my straw mat back home. The window faced the estate's training grounds. Sand pit, wooden training dummies, archery targets, weapon racks lined with swords and spears, all fading into the evening dusk. Starting tomorrow, Gregory said, mornings with the lady, afternoons free on the training field. Weapons and armor will be provided. I nodded. He turned to leave, took 2 steps, then stopped without looking back. His voice dropped lower. The young lady is a mage. She doesn't actually need protection. She just doesn't have anyone her age to talk to out here. I know, I said. A chi refining cultivator doesn't need a mortal bodyguard. That's just how it works. Every web novel says so. He left. Footsteps fading down the corridor until they disappeared around a corner. I closed the door, walked to the window, and pushed it open. Evening wind poured in, smelling of dirt and grass. The training ground was bigger than I'd thought. Small flags along the edges fluttered in the breeze. Guards patrolled in the distance, armor catching the last red light of sunset. I leaned against the window frame and watched the horizon. The sun was going down, clouds burning dark red like something was on fire behind the sky. Training dummies casting long shadows. Sword blades on the weapon rack catching occasional glints. I thought about what those merchants said. Werewolves, goblins, mages, holy knight orders, and a demon king. This world had way too much I didn't understand yet. But that was fine. I had time. Step 1. Get my martial skills back to previous life levels. Step 2. Understand this world's combat system. Step 3. Figure out if I had any shot at magic. That fireball, though. I smiled. Interesting. I walked to the bed and sat down. The frame creaked. Cotton sheets. Washed so many times they were a little stiff, but compared to the straw pad in the village, absolute luxury. I lay back, hands behind my head, staring at the ceiling where the wall lamp cast a pale circle of light. Tomorrow I'd take her outside. It wasn't safe out there, but no problem. I'd make it safe. Her voice echoed in my head. Mages are the most powerful. Nonsense, I thought. All great Daos lead to the same destination. Refined to the extreme, who's weaker than who? Her fireball hasn't even purified its chi. At best, she's at chi refining stage, great perfection. And me? I looked at my hands. I may be immortal right now, but my Dao heart has been forged through 2 entire lifetimes. Just give me time. I looked out at the night sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. I will stand supreme over all of eternity in this world. Next morning, I got woken up by knocking at the crack of dawn. I'd barely slept anyway. The bed was too soft, the blanket too warm, completely different from my straw mat back home. But the real reason I couldn't sleep was that fireball. It just floated there on top of her staff like a tame star. No fuel, no oxygen, just vibing. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was still sitting up in bed when the door swung open, and Alina marched in carrying a book thick enough to kill a man. She'd changed into a light purple dress today, braids tied with matching purple ribbons, looking like she stepped out of a painting. If paintings could stare down at you like you were a hamster. She dropped the book on my bed. Thud. The whole bed frame shook. I looked at it. Leather-bound, gold lettering, gold-dusted page edges gleaming in the morning light. 500 pages minimum. I looked up at her like, weren't we supposed to go outside today? She put her hands on her hips and lifted her chin with this smug little expression. Then she let out this incredibly self-satisfied hum. Last night when I used magic, your eyes went completely glassy. I said nothing. Her smirk widened. You think I didn't notice? I've seen that look before. All envy and desire. Like a dog that hasn't eaten in 3 days spotting a bone. That I wasn't like that. You were. She looked me dead in the eyes with absolute certainty. Your eyeballs were practically glued to my staff. I went quiet for a second. I was interested in that fireball, but I really didn't think my expression was that bad. But she seemed so sure of herself that I couldn't be bothered arguing. You want to learn magic too, right? I've got nothing better to do anyway. Might as well train a little mage for fun. She said this while looking away from me, pretending to admire the empty training field through the window, but her eyes were clearly peeking at me from the corner. I understood immediately. She wanted to teach me magic. Not casually or since I'm bored. She'd specifically gotten up early, specifically grabbed this massive book, and specifically came to my room, all to teach me magic. But she didn't want me to know she'd done it on purpose. So she put on this whole, I'm just bored, and training a mage for fun, act, like it was a passing whim, like she couldn't care less whether I learned or not. I found it kind of funny, but I didn't laugh. I could tell this young lady's pride was actually paper thin. She pulled out a thinner booklet, stacked it with the big one, and switched back to her commanding voice. Hands on hips, looking down at me sitting on the bed edge. Fundamentals of Magic Theory, Chapters 1 through 3. Finish in 3 days. Then I test you. If you can't understand it. She paused, seemingly searching for a sufficiently terrifying punishment. You peel potatoes in the kitchen. For a month, I looked down at the book, opened the first page, and froze. I couldn't read a single word. Here's the thing I'd been sort of avoiding. I was illiterate. In this life, anyway. 12 years in a village where 9 out of 10 farmers couldn't write their own names. The letters were all squiggly loops and dots and things that looked like worms that had been stepped on. Nothing like Chinese characters, or English, or anything I'd ever seen. I flipped through a few more pages. Same alien scribbles throughout. Alina noticed I'd stopped flipping. She raised an eyebrow. What? Can't read? Can't read. My voice was the same flat tone as always. But only I knew how hard those words were to say. Last life, I had 9 years of compulsory education. I could read, write, do papers. Now here I was, 112 years old, completely illiterate. Humbling doesn't even begin to cover it. Alina's eyes went wide. Those gray-blue eyes became perfectly round, mouth slightly open, face looking like someone had just told her princesses don't use the bathroom. How old are you? 112? 112, and you can't read. Her voice shot up several octaves, echoing through the quiet morning room. I stared at her blankly. I wanted to say, I grew up in a village in the absolute middle of nowhere, spent every day training and fighting and scratching food out of the dirt. Who exactly was going to teach me to read? But I said nothing, just looked at her with the calm of a dead pond. Something shifted in her expression. Shock to disbelief, disbelief to embarrassment, embarrassment to something complicated and hard to name. That mask of practiced coolness she always wore cracked just slightly, showing a little bit of genuine, "Oh no, what do I do?" underneath. She opened her mouth, closed it, turned away, and finally said, "Fine." She had me bring the books and led me to the study. She ran her finger along a shelf and pulled out a much thinner booklet. She handed it to me without making eye contact, staring at the wall instead. Her voice dropped, stiff with awkwardness. "This is a literacy primer. Learn to read first." I opened it. First page had a circle drawn on it with a word next to it. She leaned over and pointed at the circle. "This is the word for sun. See how the shape looks like a sun?" I looked at it. Different from the Chinese character, different from the English word, but she was right. It was basically a circle with little rays around it. Pictographic. Easy. I memorized it. She turned to page 2. A crescent shape. "This is moon. This is mountain. This is water." After 5 words, she stopped and looked at me. "How many do you remember?" I picked up the charcoal pencil and wrote all 5. Every stroke correct. Alina blinked. "Okay, so you're not completely hopeless. Continue. 5 more." I wrote them all. 5 more. All correct. Her expression started getting suspicious. She closed the primer and stared at me. "You're sure you've never learned to read before?" "Never." "Then how are you memorizing so fast?" "I mean, they were basically pictographs. Someone shows you once and you get the gist." But I just said, probably because I was listening carefully. She stared at me for 3 seconds, trying to find any hint of lying on my face. My expression stayed perfectly neutral, not showing off, not being humble. She reopened the primer. "Fine. I'm speeding up." She started teaching faster. 20 words in one go. I remembered all of them. 30 more. All memorized. Her finger flipped pages faster and faster, her voice speeding up with it. She was testing my limits. 10, 20, 50, 100. After each batch, she made me write them all out. I got every single one right. Eventually, she gave up on batches entirely and flipped to the comprehensive character table at the back of the book. 300 common characters. Look through them yourself. Remember as many as you can. I took the book and started flipping. But not the way she expected. I didn't stare at each character and repeat it over and over. I just scanned the shape, glanced at the meaning, and moved on. A whole page of 15+ characters in a few seconds. Can you actually remember them like that? Let's find out. I finished the entire primer, closed my eyes, ran through them all in my head. Every character crystal clear, like they'd been carved into my brain. My memory was always a bit better than average in my past life, and this body's specs seemed even higher. I opened my eyes, grabbed the charcoal pencil, and wrote out all 300 characters from start to finish. Got one wrong. Wrote a stroke in reverse order, but the character itself was correct. Alina stood beside me, staring at the page covered in densely written characters, completely speechless. I asked, "Didn't you say normal people take half a year to learn common characters?" She took a deep breath. "Is there something wrong with your brain?" "No, I'm just slightly smarter than average." She stared at me, thinking, slightly? It took her 2 months. Now that I could actually read, I finally cracked open Fundamentals of Magic Theory, first chapter. I started reading. Magical power is an invisible energy existing throughout heaven and earth, permeating every corner of the atmosphere, infusing mountains, rivers, vegetation, and stone. Mages use spiritual power to perceive and guide magical energy, drawing it into their own magical circuits, then releasing it through specific methods. I closed the book, shut my eyes, and ran an instant translation in my head. Magical power equals spiritual energy. Magical circuits equals meridians. Magic models equals technique construction. Spiritual power equals divine sense. I opened my eyes and smiled. Just as I thought. Same soup, different bowl. This world's mages were basically doing chi cultivation. They just didn't have the concept of a dantian and stored spiritual energy in circuits. Instead, like putting water in pipes instead of a pool. Low efficiency, small capacity, and prone to bursting. If I could route spiritual energy into a dantian structure, well, that was assuming this body even had a dantian. But the principle was the same. Chapter 2 covered elemental classifications: fire, water, wind, earth, light, dark, lightning. 7 attributes. The book said most mages were born with affinity for only 1 or 2, determined by talent, unchangeable. Fire mages couldn't learn water magic. Period. This was an iron law of magic, unbroken for thousands of years. I read the 7 attributes section and frowned. This classification was so crude. Back in my previous life's cultivation world, the 5 elements had a proper cycle of generation and destruction. This world's 7 elements were just sitting there with no interaction logic. And born with it, can't change it, was literally just single spiritual root versus multi-spiritual root, repackaged. The book said, unchangeable, please. My web novel library had multiple methods for modifying spiritual roots after birth. Chapter 3 was about constructing magic models, the core and hardest part of the whole system. To cast a spell, you had to build a 3-dimensional model inside your mind using spiritual power. Even a basic fireball required millimeter-level precision, angles within 1 degree of deviation, filling each layer in strict order, and completing the whole thing within 3 seconds. The book said a qualified apprentice needed at least 3 months to reliably build a fireball model. Talented ones needed a month. Geniuses took a week. And the youngest legendary grand mage in history, the great sage Merlin, supposedly mastered his first spell in 3 days. I almost laughed out loud. 3-dimensional models? Millimeter precision? Angle deviation under 1 degree? This was just visualization, made unnecessarily complicated. In my past life's cultivation, forming a golden core required visualization. Nascent soul required visualization. But that was building a Tao seed inside your body, not using divine sense to play 3D Tetris. This world's mages were basically using divine sense to draw CAD blueprints inside their heads. Draw it right, and the spell works. Draw it wrong, and it fails. No wonder apprentices needed 3 months. The method was so clunky. Real techniques should be: thought arrives, energy follows. 1 mental impulse and spiritual energy responds naturally. Why would you need a 3-dimensional model? Then I reconsidered. If people here didn't have dantians or proper meridians and could only work through magical circuits, then they literally can't do thought arrives, energy follows. Their thought and their energy had a circuit in between, so they needed models to bridge the gap. This was probably a systemic flaw, not a personal one, which meant if I could modify my own body and create something like a dantian. What are you doing? Alina's voice snapped me out of it. I opened my eyes. Apparently, I'd been sitting there with my eyes closed for a couple minutes without realizing. Thinking about whether there's a simpler method. Alina looked at me like I'd committed blasphemy. A simpler method? Magic model construction was passed down by the great sage Merlin himself. Every mage for thousands of years has learned it this way. Who do you think you are? Smarter than the great sage? I'm not saying his method is wrong. I'm saying there might be an alternative approach. She rolled her eyes. Fine, fine, fine. Stop thinking about nonsense. She pulled an even thicker book from the shelf, something called Complete History of the Elven Court, and hugged it to her chest. Just finish the basic theory first. 3 days, through chapter 3. I'll test you. If you fail, potato peeling. Good. You remember. She walked to the door, stopped without turning around, and said, breakfast will be sent to your room shortly. Eat it while it's hot. Don't blame me if it gets cold. Then she slammed the door. Bang. Footsteps fading down the corridor. I sat on the bed looking at the steaming porridge and sliced bread on the table. In all the web novels I'd read, every protagonist who transmigrated to another world came loaded with cheat abilities, heaven-defying talent, learning magic in 1 day, becoming a genius in 3. Me? Still a rookie. Still had to grind. I bit into the bread. Delicious. 100 times better than the black bread in the village. While chewing, I thought, if this world's magic really is as complicated as the book says, why can't it be simplified? Back when I was lifting weights, I saw so many people overcomplicating things. Golden ratio training, supersets, failure training methods. In the end, the only thing that actually worked was one principle: progressive overload. Can do 10 today? Try 11 tomorrow. That's simple. What's the essence of magic? The book says, perceive magical power, guide magical power, release magical power. 3 steps. If I could simplify those 3 steps to their absolute minimum, who needs a 3-dimensional model? I put down the bread and closed my eyes. Time to try perceiving magical power. The book said it was invisible energy existing everywhere in the world. I emptied my mind and tried to feel for anything invisible around me. 1 minute. Nothing. 2 minutes. Nothing. 5 minutes. I felt like an idiot. 10 minutes. Still nothing. I opened my eyes and let out a long breath. Maybe my method was wrong. Maybe I just didn't have the talent for magical perception. But I refused to accept that. I remembered the first time I walked into a gym in my past life. Couldn't even push an empty bar. The trainer, decent guy, at least he didn't try to sell me expensive lessons, just told me, "You're not built for this." I didn't believe him. 1 year later, 60 kilos. 3 years, 100. 10 years, standing on the podium at nationals with a bronze medal. That trainer would have eaten his words. I closed my eyes again. This time I didn't rush to perceive anything. Instead, I used the meditation technique from my web novels. Proper, entering stillness. Deep breath in. Visualize true chi entering through the crown of the head. Slow breath out. Visualize impure chi leaving through the soles of the feet. After 3 breaths, my heartbeat slowed. The sounds around me, wind, birds, footsteps in the corridor, seemed to be separated by an invisible membrane, becoming distant and muffled. I turned my awareness inward. Blood vessels, muscles, bones. I could vaguely sense all of them, but that wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for the tentacle of divine sense. Web novels say everyone has divine sense, just varying in strength. An ordinary person's divine sense is like a lamp covered by thick cloth. Light can't escape. The goal of cultivation is to pull that cloth away. I imagine my consciousness like water, slowly spreading outward from the point between my eyebrows. Very slow, very gentle, like a drop of ink falling into clear water, gradually diffusing. And then, in that absolute stillness, I felt something. Incredibly faint, like a spider's thread in darkness, barely brushing against my awareness. That's it. Spiritual energy. No, this world's magical power. I didn't try to grab it. I just sat there quietly, feeling it exist. The sensation was strange, not touch, not hearing. More like my divine sense had opened its eyes for the first time and seen a blurry light. Spiritual root. I have a spiritual root. Easy to miss, but it's definitely there. I slowly opened my eyes. The porridge on the table was still steaming. I looked at my hands. Nothing had changed. I couldn't shoot fireballs, couldn't control water, couldn't make anything move even a little. But I know where the road is now. So that's how spiritual energy works in this world. I grinned crookedly. This confirms it. 7 elemental affinities equals 7 types of spiritual roots. This is still a cultivation world. Same soup, different bowl. I drank some porridge, set down the bowl, and reopened Fundamentals of Magic Theory from Chapter 1. This time, every word made sense. Every sentence was clear. I started taking serious notes, drawing knowledge structures with charcoal pencil, listing key points and reorganizing everything through a cultivation framework. I read fast and carefully. Thanks to all those cultivation web novels from my past life, I understood this stuff way quicker than anyone here would expect. 3 hours in, I'd finished half the book. Then my speed picked up even more. Any unfamiliar characters, I looked up in the dictionary. By evening, I'd finished the whole thing. The dinner a servant brought had gone cold on the table. Didn't touch it. I was still reading. Like a drowning man clutching a piece of driftwood. Like a starving person who finally found food. This world had so much I didn't understand yet. But I had time. And now I had books. And I had someone willing to teach me. Even if she said it was just for fun, I smiled to myself and muttered, "She says it's just for fun," but she showed up at dawn carrying a 500-page book to my room. That's not for fun. Even elders who formally transmit cultivation techniques aren't this dedicated. As the saying goes, great horses are common, but great mentors are rare. Alina's kindness to me is no less than that of an ancient sage to his pupil. This debt. I'll remember it. I spent 2 days reading that, Fundamentals of Magic Theory, book 5 times cover to cover. By day 3, it wasn't a book anymore. It was a tree growing inside my brain. The trunk was the 3 core pillars, 7 attributes, magical circuits, model construction. The branches were thousands of derived theories spreading out like dragons and snakes. The leaves were specific spells and casting techniques, so dense they blotted out the sky. Eyes closed, I could trace that tree from root to tip. Every single leaf memorized perfectly. But I didn't rush to cast anything. Because the book kept screaming, in bold text, practically begging, about one concept: magical circuit tolerance. Circuits are the channels inside your body that carry magical power, like blood vessels for blood, like meridians for chi. Everyone's born with a fixed set, thickness, quantity, layout, all decided at birth. They determine how much magical power you can hold and how strong your spells can be. Force too much power through circuits that are too thin? They shatter. Best case, magical power goes haywire and eats you alive. Worst case, instant death, soul scattered to the wind. That's why mages have to start training young. Gentle, gradual magical channeling to slowly stretch the circuits wider, layer by layer, inch by inch. Like tempering the body, like forging bones. Can't rush it. I knew this logic all too well. Last life, I watched so many people destroy themselves chasing shortcuts. Maxing out weights too fast, slamming gear, using every extreme method to wreck their own bodies. Result? Torn ligaments, ruptured tendons, herniated discs, one-way tickets to steroid planet. The ones who ran fastest never reached the finish line. This life, I wasn't making that mistake. So I waited until day 3 to begin. That morning, before dawn, I sat cross-legged in the corner of the abandoned training ground behind the estate. Back against a crooked, old locust tree. Weird, bright-colored mushrooms growing in clusters at the base. Air carrying the dry cold of late autumn. Ground cracked like an old map. I closed my eyes. Past life meditation experience. Activated. Empty the mind. Sink the consciousness. Become a still lake. No ripples, no dust. At first, nothing. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe half a day. Then the feeling came. Like the thinnest veil imaginable brushing across my cheek. So light it barely existed. But my awareness caught it in that instant, like grabbing a thread of light in total darkness. I steadied my mind and kept sinking deeper. Gradually, that veil became clearer. It was everywhere, drifting in the air, hovering above the ground, clinging to the tree trunk, even floating on the caps of those weird mushrooms. Like an ultra-faint mist, thick as paste in some spots, thin as smoke in others, but never completely gone. The book called it magical essence. I called it spiritual energy. Names don't matter. What matters is I could sense it. By noon the sun was at its peak, pale light splashing through gaps in the canopy, shattering into gold coins on the ground. My back was soaked through with sweat, the price of extreme mental concentration. I started trying to guide magical essence into my body. This step was 100 times harder than sensing it. The stuff was alive. The harder you tried to grab it, the more it slipped away, like a mudfish squirming through the gaps between your fingers. I tried again and again. Every time, right at the moment of success, that thread of essence would spook like a startled fish and scatter into nothing. I stopped. Deep breath. Sink the chi. Still the heart. Start over. This time I changed my approach. Instead of grabbing, I gently wrapped my spiritual power around the essence. Like cupping a butterfly in my hands, giving it space, giving it time, letting it calm down on its own. Taming it. An entire morning. That's how long it took to guide one hair-thin strand of essence to my fingertip. It rested there for less than 2 seconds, grayish-white, faintly luminous, like an impossibly fine silk thread catching sunlight for just a flash. The most fragile thread of cosmic law in existence. Then I released my spiritual power and let it dissipate naturally. I opened my eyes and flexed my stiff fingers. No rush. Take it slow. In the afternoon, I started trying to build a magical circulation inside my body. Following the book's method, use spiritual power to guide magical essence into the circuits, make it flow along a specific path. Starting from the fingertips, traveling up the inner arm, through the wrist, forearm, elbow, turning at the shoulder, passing under the collarbone, merging into the main chest circuit, then descending through the abdomen, flowing out the other hand and back into the world. The most basic circulation route. Every apprentice's first path. The most primitive, heavenly cycle. Painfully slow. Like carving words into stone with a needle. The circuits were thinner than hair. I could actually see them inside me, dried up riverbeds that had been empty for ages, narrow and shallow, walls covered in tiny cracks, looking like they'd crumble to dust if I breathed wrong. Every inch the essence advanced, I felt a stabbing, dull, aching pain, like muscles being torn to their limit, like bones being ground down and reforged inch by inch. Well, I sighed. Looks like I can't avoid needing a foundation establishment pill. My gaze drifted down to those brightly colored mushrooms at the base of the tree. Deep purple caps edged with a faint blue glow. They looked exactly like the inspiration mushrooms from my past life's web novels. My brain automatically pulled up the entry. First-grade low-rank spiritual herb. Contains trace amounts of spiritual power. Commonly used as supplementary material in refining foundation establishment pills. Toxic when eaten raw. Mild cases cause hallucinations. Severe cases cause death. Must purify impurities with spiritual power before consumption. But this isn't a cultivation world. These might not be inspiration mushrooms. They could just be regular poison mushrooms. Eat one and die. I stared at those mushrooms for a moment. The book says circuits need to be widened gently, without rushing. But that assumes you have a teacher guiding you and resources to help. I'm a tenant farmer's son. No foundation establishment pill. No marrow cleansing elixir. Can't even afford a decent magical potion. If I go by the book, how many circuits will I open in 10 years? I gritted my teeth, grabbed a fistful of mushrooms, and refined them on the spot. The path to immortality is fighting heaven, fighting earth, fighting man. I've been refining chi for years. It's time to stare death in the face. I crushed them into a ball shaped like a pill and swallowed it in one gulp. Boom. Concentrated medicinal power exploded through my entire body like lava being poured into my veins. Like a flood smashing through a dam. My eyes went blood red. In my delirium, I saw visions. A green lotus blooming in primordial chaos, swaying elegantly, Tao runes carved on every petal. A white-robed youth standing on a mountain. Peak, back to all living beings, leaving only the words. At the end of the immortal road, who stands supreme? A bronze ancient sword falling from the highest heaven, for characters carved on. The blade. I am the heavenly emperor, and a figure wrapped entirely in golden light, riding a 7-colored auspicious cloud, wielding an iron staff, shouting at an army of celestial gods, eat my staff. Wait, I struggled through the hallucinations. That art style is wrong, but the figure flashed past and was replaced by a towering gate of heaven, and beyond it a road stretching endlessly upward. Ha 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 ha. I threw my head back and laughed. I see it. The road to heaven. The bridge to immortality. I've made it. In my early years, I already knew the world was harsh. My voice hitched. Forgot the beginning. Forgot the middle. Forgot the ending too. Whatever. My fate is mine, not heaven's. Break through, boom. I could feel those shriveled circuit walls getting blasted open by a savage force. Medicinal power carried magical essence like a million-man army charging through my circuits, tearing them apart inch by inch, rebuilding them inch by inch. The chi vortex in my dantian compressed to its absolute limit, then shattered, like a star exploding inside me, like the birth of the universe, like heaven and earth splitting apart. My blood felt like it was drained out and replaced with mercury. My bones felt like they were smashed to pieces and reassembled. A thread of primordial chi poured in through the crown of my skull like a lightning bolt straight through my soul. My entire body convulsed like I'd been struck by tribulation lightning. Heart pounding, teeth clenched, I seized the moment and started frantically cycling the heavenly circuit. 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 3 cycles. Evening came. I finally completed 1 full heavenly cycle. Magical essence entered through my fingertips, traveled upstream along the arm circuits, through shoulder, chest, abdomen, like a dormant dragon swimming through my body, and flowed out the other hand, returning to the world. 1 complete cycle. I opened my eyes. It was dark. The sky had turned deep indigo. A few stars glimmered faintly, like eyes peering down from the highest heaven. My forehead was covered in fine sweat. My shirt was completely soaked through, clinging cold to my skin. My arms ached, but my mental state was bizarrely good. My brain felt like it had been washed in celestial spring water. Clear, quiet, transparent. I looked down at my hands. Same hands. Thin, bony knuckles, blue veins visible under the skin. But something was different. I closed my eyes and scanned my internal state. Those circuits that had been bone dry, they now held the faintest trace of moisture. Like a riverbed that had been empty for eternity, finally receiving its first rain. The water had already flowed away, but the riverbed remembered the feeling. The feeling of being washed by magical power. The feeling of waking up from death. Pseudo-foundation establishment, complete. I was so exhausted I could barely exist. Felt like my entire body had been hollowed out. But I threw my head back and laughed, voice echoing across the abandoned training grounds. Good. What a foundation establishment. First, good, loud as a bell. What a staring death in the face. Second, good. Already starting to shake. Good. What a. Third, good, never finished. My eyelids gave up. In the last moment before consciousness plunged into darkness, I carefully tucked the remaining mushrooms into my shirt. Don't waste them. Then I face-planted under the old locust tree and passed out cold. I woke up with the worst headache of 2 lifetimes, mouth tasting like I'd chewed raw herbs and chased them with vinegar. Turns out the old gardener found me passed out under the tree, foaming at the mouth, twitching, and yelling. I made it. He thought I was dead and nearly threw his hoe down a well. Alina was sitting by my bed looking absolutely furious. Hair down, no braids, green dress, arms crossed, trying very hard to seem mature while clearly wanting to strangle me. She informed me that my foundation establishment pill was actually called a hallucinogenic ghost parasol mushroom. Highly toxic. Causes hallucinations, vomiting, seizures, the works. A doctor had to pump 3 bowls of herbal medicine into me. I threw up twice, and she stopped mid-sentence and went red, skipping over certain digestive details. Apparently, I was a mess until midnight. You can't even tell mushrooms apart, and you ate them, she scolded, eyes round, voice fierce, trying her absolute best to sound like a disappointed adult instead of a worried kid. I told her calmly it was foundation establishment pill material, a substance that temporarily boosts spiritual power by stimulating magical circuits. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You ate poison mushrooms. On purpose. And called them pills. Before she could finish yelling at me, I held up my hand and summoned a fireball. Perfect sphere. Steady orange-red with blue edges. Silent. Just hovering over my palm like it belonged there. Her mouth stopped mid-word. Eyes went wide. She forgot to breathe for a second. When did you learn that? Just now. Just now? Yesterday you were poisoned and today you can. I could probably do it before the poisoning. Just wasn't stable yet. She asked me to do it again. I grabbed that tiny thread of magical power inside me, thought one simple word, burn, and skipped the whole ridiculous 3D model construction entirely. Another fireball appeared, smaller but steadier than the first. Alina stared at it for a long time. Her expression cycled through shock, confusion, deep thought, and something complicated she couldn't name. She murmured almost to herself, I'm a genius mage. Top 10 talent in the entire capital. My first spell took me a full week. She paused. You ate poisonous mushrooms, napped for an afternoon, and just learned it. I said modestly that it was pure luck. She didn't buy it. She stood by the window for a long time, staring out at the training grounds, then turned around and told me to rest today. Tomorrow she'd have Gregory test my magical talent. Perception sensitivity, elemental affinity, circuit capacity. The whole package. I almost blurted out, so it's a spiritual root test, but caught myself halfway. She asked what a spiritual root was. I changed the subject. Inside, though, my brain was already spinning. Talent testing meant spiritual root assessment. And if my roots turned out mediocre, my past life web novel encyclopedia had at least a dozen upgrade methods ready to go. She left with one last instruction. Sleep early. Don't be late tomorrow. The door closed. I lay there grinning at the ceiling, palms still warm from the fireball. The poisonous mushroom foundation establishment pill worked. My circuits remembered what magical power felt like. And I'd just cast a spell by pure willpower instead of building some stupid mental CAD drawing. Totally worth the food poisoning. Next morning, Gregory showed up with breakfast and a fist-sized crystal ball for my talent test. Simple deal. Hands on the ball. Empty your mind. Let magical power flow naturally. I put my hands on. 3 cycles of circulation. Then the crystal ball basically had a seizure. White, gold, blue, red, every color exploded inside it like a fireworks factory catching fire. The thing was glowing so bright it hurt to look at. The copper base started humming. Gregory's face went pale, and he told me to stop. He didn't say a word after, just stared at the ball for a very long time, then told me to follow him, straight to Alina's room. He whispered something in her ear. I only caught 3 words: crystal ball, all attributes, and overloaded. Alina's permanent bored with the universe expression actually cracked. She sent Gregory out and closed the door. Then she told me the truth about everything. Her magical talent was absurdly high. Magic Academy headmaster wanted her as a personal disciple. A cardinal called her a gift from God, but that talent made her a prize everyone wanted to claim. Cardinals wanting her to marry their nephews, nobles wanting her for their sons, even the king sending proposals for his second prince. Her father was just a minor viscount who couldn't refuse any of them without making enemies. So he hid her out here in the middle of nowhere, hoping everyone would forget about her. But she knew it was only a matter of time before someone came knocking. That's why she wanted me. Not as a friend, as a shield. A nobody with no background that nobody would notice. She taught me magic so I'd survive long enough to be useful. But now it's different, she said. Because my test result wasn't just good. It was all attributes. Every single element. And the crystal ball didn't just max out, it overloaded. That ball was rated up to legendary tier. Grand mages don't overload it. I overloaded it. Meanwhile, inside my head, I was doing backflips. All 7 elements. In cultivation terms, that's a chaos constitution. The once in 10,000 years body type. Last life I trained for a decade and couldn't even sense spiritual energy. This life the heavens gave me a chaos body. Was heaven compensating me? I had to physically fight my face to stop grinning. Alina laid out 3 choices. Stay hidden here and slowly get strong. Risky if exposed. Join a major faction. 80% chance of assassination. Or go home and pretend nothing happened. Safe but pointless. I didn't hesitate. I picked none. Or rather, all of them. I'd stay here as my base, but I wasn't hiding forever, joining anyone, or going back to farming. I was going to build my own faction. Alina looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You just learned Fireball yesterday. A just learned Fireball all attribute chaos body. I corrected her. She couldn't argue with that. I told her the deal. She becomes my faction's chief mage, or vice sect leader, grand elder, whatever title she liked. Anyone who wanted to touch her would have to go through me first. And I didn't just know combat. I knew how to turn nobodies into monsters on 0 budget. I'd done it to myself in a previous life. She stared at me for a long time. In those gray-blue eyes I could see doubt, confusion, shock, and buried underneath all of it, so deep she probably didn't even know it was there, the tiniest spark of hope. I had her. Alina didn't answer my, join my faction, pitch right away. Just said, I'll think about it, and went back to normal. Me carrying breakfast, organizing bookshelves, being her personal entertainment system. But she kept watching me. And the next day, she tried to catch me daydreaming by claiming I'd shelved the book wrong. Classic bluff. I called her on it, and she admitted she just wanted to know what I was thinking about. Training, I said. Here? While you're supposed to be keeping me company, yes. I can do both. My brain's free while you're reading anyway. Might as well run magical circuits. This kicked off the most ridiculous negotiation of my 2 lives. She kept finding reasons I shouldn't train during her time. I kept proving there was literally no conflict. She asked when I sleep. I told her meditation replaces sleep. She looked at me like I was an alien species. Then she asked the real question, what if I told you to stay? I said I'd stay. No hesitation. She'd helped me first, taught me to read, gave me magic books, kept my secret. Debts get repaid. That's my rule. Who made that rule? I did. Inside, though, I was thinking in full strategic mode. Han Xian endured crawling between someone's legs. Gojian slept on firewood and tasted bile for years. Every great figure in history started by swallowing their pride. The hidden dragon bides its time doesn't mean the dragon is weak. It means the moment hasn't come yet. But outwardly, perfectly loyal face. Not a crack. She also made me promise not to wreck her house with my training. Apparently, she was worried about collapsing roofs, random fires, and mysterious glowing lights. I said it probably wouldn't happen. Probably, if you blow up my house, I'll plant you back in your village. Bury you in dirt, water you, and see if a normal person grows out next year. I told her with a straight face that I'm not a mushroom and can't be planted. She snorted, hid behind her book, and mumbled from behind it. Just don't cause trouble. Deal accepted. Hidden Dragon mode. Engaged. 6 years passed in a blur of seasons, training, and Alina pretending she wasn't worried about me. Spring I'd forget to pick flowers because I was running magical circuits. Summer she'd hold ice water, forget to give it to me, then splash it in my face when I asked for it for body tempering. Autumn I completed my first full heavenly cycle, and she somehow noticed something was different. I blamed the lighting. She didn't push it, but quietly ordered the kitchen to pile my plate with supplements. Winter we'd sit by the fireplace, her reading, me meditating. She once gave me half her blanket thinking I was asleep. I said, I'm meditating. She snatched it back. 3 wooden training dummies were destroyed during my tenure. She grew from a little girl into a young woman. I grew from a scrawny kid into a tall, scrawny adult. She called me a bamboo pole. I said bamboo poles have low centers of gravity and don't fall over. She rolled her eyes. By year 5, I'd started venturing out across the Viscounty, fighting monsters, saving people, and picking up disciples along the way. Founded a sect called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Only 5 members, but maintaining even a tiny sect cost more than feeding a family. Protective formations, equipment, daily expenses. Being a sect master was basically being broke with extra steps. Year 6, I hit a turning point. A goblin horde wiped out 3 villages. I arrived to find the last one still burning, charred bodies everywhere. I stood in the ruins, said nothing for a long time, then cast a forbidden tear spell. Within a month, that entire goblin population was extinct from the Eastern Kingdom. Nobody knew who did it. The Adventurers Association classified it as forbidden-level magic. Church investigators found nothing. Alina knew, of course. When I came back, she just poked my face and told me to eat more because I looked thin. That night we sat on the manor rooftop under the stars. She asked if I'd ever leave. I said I'd always come back, because she still owed me an answer. 6 years ago, she said, I'll think about it, when I asked her to join my faction. Still hadn't responded. She laughed softly in the moonlight. I haven't decided yet. Take your time. Breakthroughs require patience. Forcing them causes deviation. Can you stop relating everything to cultivation? No. A week later, I headed to Cold City, the western frontier fortress, humanity's last wall before the Demon King's territory. My cultivation had hit a bottleneck. I needed bigger challenges and more resources. Also, I was completely broke from running the sect. I registered at the Adventurers Association under the fake name, Li Feiyu. The receptionist, tired blonde girl who'd clearly dealt with too many idiots today, asked me to prove I was a mage. No chant, no staff, no gestures. I just thought about fire. A near-white flame with gold edges materialized in my palm. Perfectly still, perfectly silent, compressed to an insane density. The receptionist had worked there 5 years and seen every kind of spell casting, chanting, waving staffs, drawing symbols, even one guy who apparently danced. She'd never seen someone just think a spell into existence with 0 magical fluctuation. She handed me an F-rank adventurer plate without further questions. I wrote, none, under past combat achievements, because officially I didn't exist. I pocketed the bronze tag and hung around the lobby. Then a commotion erupted at the entrance. They're here. The heroes' party has arrived. The heroes' party walked into the Adventurers Association, and the whole room split open like Moses parting the sea. I leaned against the wall and did what any self-respecting reincarnated cultivator would do. Silently judged every single one of them. 5 people, 5 colors, textbook protagonist squad. Golden-haired pretty boy with a holy sword at his hip. That was Alexander, the hero. Fortune-blessed face, spiritual energy practically leaking off his blade. That sword wasn't even a real weapon. It was solidified faith. Millions of people believing in the hero and victory, all compressed into one glowing piece of metal. It didn't cut flesh. It cut darkness itself. Terrifying concept, honestly. Red-haired fire mage. Single fire attribute spiritual root, purity higher than mine. But still using the clunky 3D model casting method. Too slow. Elf archer, wind attribute, divine sense sharp enough to detect a fly blinking. In cultivation terms, A, divine marksman, most annoying type to fight. Dwarf warrior, earth attribute, body like an iron tower. But short and stocky meant low center of gravity, limited footwork. I could topple him in 3 moves. White-robed priestess, some kind of holy light. That wasn't exactly spiritual energy. More like faith-powered force. Hadn't figured that one out yet. Needed more observation. Standard hero party composition. Classic. But classic meant one fatal weakness. Everything depended on the hero. He goes down, the whole team collapses. Alexander drew the holy sword, and the entire hall lit up. The crowd went absolutely berserk. Cheering, clapping, people jumping on tables waving drinks despite the no-alcohol policy. An old adventurer teared up. A big guy with a shield offered to sub in if things got tough. Some girl screamed, "You have to win," loud enough to shatter glass. Alexander stood in the center of it all, smiled that blessed by heaven smile, and said 3 words, "We'll win." Everyone believed him. I stayed against my wall, arms crossed, face blank, brain churning. His path was external, powered by other people's faith and the world's destiny. My path was internal, powered by my own body, my own mind, my own will. Neither better nor worse. Just different roads. But I couldn't help wondering, if my Tao heart ever clashed with that sword's concentrated faith of millions, would I hold? No answer yet. But that's partly why I came to the Western frontier. The hero said, "We'll win," and the whole hall erupted. Meanwhile, I'm standing in the corner thinking, classic flag. In every web novel I've ever read, 9 out of 10 people who say, "We'll win," end up losing. The 10th one gets bailed out by teammates. Alexander noticed me for exactly 1 second as he scanned the room. Impressive instincts, destiny's chosen, intuition is no joke. Pure heart, sharp senses, solid foundation. Honestly, great cultivation material. Shame he picked the wrong method. Then he came over and hit me with, "Have we met before?" The most cliché pickup line in 2 worlds. I told him no, first time in Cold City. He accepted that and sat down with his squad. The elf archer, Legolas, lingered on me the longest. I could feel his divine sense scanning me like a metal detector. Elven perception really is something else. I pretended to be very interested in the F-rank job board. Find a cat. Walk a dog. Babysit. Riveting career options for a guy who wiped out an entire goblin species last month. After they finished reviewing intel about the Demon King's army pushing east, Alexander came back to me specifically. Warned me the Western frontier was dangerous for solo adventurers. I evaluated his eyes. Not testing me. Genuinely worried about a random stranger. This kid's heart was actually pure. "Got it," I said. Then my mouth moved before my brain and I added, "Stay safe too, Taoist friend." His face went blank. Tao. Friend. My face also went blank. Internal panic. It's village dialect. I recovered smoothly. Means friend. He bought it. Even said my village had interesting slang. We exchanged names. I gave him my fake one, Li Feiyu, and he offered help if I ever needed it. After he walked back, the elf told the group I wasn't normal. Said my breathing hadn't changed frequency once in 15 minutes, and my stance against the wall kept perfect symmetrical weight distribution the entire time. Alexander's conclusion, as long as he's not an enemy, doesn't matter. Fair enough. I wasn't his enemy. Not yet, anyway. Probably not ever. But in 2 lifetimes of experience, probably, has never been a guarantee. After leaving the association, I stopped in a dark alley and said, "Come out," without turning around. The elf archer Legolas stepped from the shadows. He'd been tailing me since the door. "You knew I was following? Your footsteps are silent. Your breathing isn't." First time I saw that elf almost smile. Looked exactly like my emotionless second disciple Ophelia back at the sect. Confirmed my theory. All elves are born with resting dead face. He asked what I really was. I told him I was a cultivator, then quickly translated it as village dialect for someone who trains body and mind. He asked about my breathing technique. I said I invented it myself, which was technically true. I cobbled it together from web novels. He actually looked impressed, bowed slightly, and vanished into the night. Mental note. Pureblood elves have terrifyingly sharp perception. He caught my breathing frequency and weight distribution. Need to mask better next time. Back at the cheapest in room in Cold City, I sat on the wooden plank bed and ran 7 heavenly cycles. My golden core was getting rounder and more flawless. Not bad for someone with 0 teachers, 0 pills, and a curriculum built entirely from fiction. Then I pulled out my secret project, a palm-sized black banner I'd spent 3 months crafting. Spider silk from a blue-faced demon spider for the fabric, heartwood from an ancient dead tree for the frame. Carved with runes using my own blood essence and divine sense. In web novels, this thing is called a 10,000-soul banner. Ultimate demonic artifact, devours souls, blots out the sun, makes righteous cultivators want to kill you on sight. Terrible branding. I renamed it the Human Emperor banner. Same tool, completely different marketing. 10,000 souls, screams villain. Human Emperor, screams protagonist. And since I'd been telling my 5 disciples that Wind Spirit Moon Shadow sect was a prestigious hidden orthodox sect with ancient heritage, walking around with something called a soul-devouring death flag would really undermine the narrative. Problem was, the banner was still an empty shell. Had the skeleton, the meridians, the runes, but no souls to power it. Like a body without a spirit. So at midnight, I slipped out of the inn, jumped the 20-yard city wall in one breath. Guards noticed nothing, and headed into the darkness toward the ash forest. Time to go shopping for souls. That night, I jumped the city wall and went grocery shopping in the ash forest, a dead wasteland full of low-level monsters that higher-ranked adventurers wouldn't even glance at. Perfect for my purposes. See, my Human Emperor banner needed souls the way a car needs gas. Empty tank, no power. So I went to fill it up. First customer, a goblin tried to sneak attack me from behind a tree. I finger-chopped its head off without breaking stride. The banner unfolded by itself, absolutely thrilled, and slurped up the soul like a kid with a juice box. 1. Then it became a conveyor belt. Goblins, kobolds, giant spiders, mutant wolves, undead, the forest's entire night shift came out to play. I walked through them at a comfortable pace, hands alternating strikes, white flashes popping in the darkness like silent lightning. Every scream ended with a bone crack. The banner barely had time to close between feedings. Green light patterns spread across its surface like liquid jade, pulsing with its own heartbeat. Halfway through, I sat down and checked inventory. 137 souls were thrashing around inside, screaming in unison, goblin shrieks, wolf howls, orc roars, all at once. Enough psychic noise to shatter a C-rank adventurer's mind. I found it mildly annoying. Gave my divine sense a little shake and told them, listen up. Being absorbed into my Human Emperor banner is the greatest fortune of your miserable lives. Don't be ungrateful. Accept the blessing. They all shut up instantly. Kept hunting. 200. 300. 400. By dawn I walked out of the forest looking cleaner than when I went in. The gate guards stared at me, then at the forest behind me, opened their mouths, looked at my face, and decided not to ask questions. Smart guards. Back at the inn, I checked final count. 431 souls, all subdued by the banner's runes, converted into obedient energy packets floating quietly inside. The banner's surface glowed with stable green patterns, pulsing like an ancient heartbeat. I folded it up, sat on the bed, and began channeling the refined soul energy into my body, warm spring water flowing through long dry riverbeds. One night, 431 souls. Not bad for a shopping trip. No rush. The road is long. After clearing out most of the ash forest overnight, I headed south to farm slime souls instead. Weak as dirt, but a soul's a soul. The Human Emperor banner doesn't care about quality when you're filling it in bulk. I left the forest monsters partially alive on purpose, by the way. Web novel wisdom. Never clean out a hunting ground completely. Low-level adventurers need somewhere to train. You break the ecosystem, karma comes back around. The Tao leaves one thread of life for all things, except goblins. Goblins get exterminated. No exceptions. On the way to the slime fields, I stumbled across an old man with a copper-rank mage badge teaching a little girl about monsters. He was doing the whole wise mentor routine, poking a slime with his staff, explaining how only magic can defeat them, in this deep, dramatic voice. The girl was eating it up, eyes sparkling like he was Merlin himself. I minded my own business and started harvesting slime souls. They were so pathetically weak that my magical pressure alone shattered them before I even touched them. The banner was happily vibrating at my hip, gulping souls like popcorn. Then I heard a scream. The old man and the girl had gotten surrounded by 50-plus slimes, including a nasty purple mutant the size of a horse that dripped acid strong enough to melt metal. The old man tried to cast a fireball. His staff hiccuped a feeble light and did nothing. He tried again. Nothing. Third attempt produced a wobbly fireball that fizzled out 3 feet short of the nearest slime. Then, and I cannot stress this enough, the old fraud shoved the little girl aside and ran. Didn't look back once. Left a child standing alone in a ring of acid-dripping monsters. She didn't even cry. Just stood there with her fists clenched, watching him disappear. I walked over, asked casually if anyone wanted these slimes since they seemed unclaimed, reached out my hand, and squeezed. Every single slime froze in place. Acid droplets suspended in midair like purple jewels. Then they all shattered silently into nothing. No mess, no noise, no leftovers. Just gone. The banner collected every soul, including the mutants, which glowed like a little star inside. I turned to leave. The girl thanked me. Then she asked why the old man ran. Because he was scared. But he said mages are the strongest. He's not a mage. He's a fraud in a mage's robe. She started crying and asked if she could ever trust anyone again. I started walking away. Not my problem, not my business. I'm here to collect souls, not adopt orphans. But then my divine sense swept over her out of habit. And I stopped. Something about that little girl's energy signature was wrong. My divine sense doesn't lie. Her presence was way too dense for a human child. Like a compressed sponge pretending to be a cotton ball. So I walked back, crouched down, looked at her perfect porcelain skin, way too flawless for a kid in patched-up clothes, and said flatly, "I can't believe I didn't immediately realize you weren't human." She tried the innocent act. "Big brother, what do you mean? I don't understand." I punched her in the stomach. 1% power. She flew like a kicked soccer ball, bounced twice across the grass, and landed in a scorched crater. Then her disguise melted away. Braids unraveled into silver-white hair. Peasant dress split open to reveal a purple gown with silver trim. Childish face reshaping into something between teenager and young woman. Pale purple eyes like washed-out amethyst. A demon. She got up, brushed grass off her skirt like this happened regularly, and asked how I'd seen through her disguise ring. "It hides your demonic aura fine. But your existence is too heavy. External tools can't fix that." She looked confused. I punched her again, harder this time, mostly to test her durability and break that ring so she couldn't hide again mid-conversation. She smashed into a dead tree hard enough to crack the trunk. She started crying. I surrendered. "Why did you hit me again?" "Insurance against lying. Turns out she's Lilith, daughter of the previous demon king. Her uncle killed her father, took the throne, and has been hunting her for months. She fled across the entire continent, from the demon realm through the western frontier to the frozen north. Do you know what long-distance travel does to a 30-year-old demon maiden's skin? Then back south because it was too cold. Her combat abilities were basically zero. She could shape-shift, racial talent from her nightmare clan mother, but only into smaller forms, cast a stealth spell, and use an illumination spell that, frequently, doesn't light up. That's it. Her father's guards were wiped out. She'd been running and hiding for half a year, alternating between fascination and terror at human civilization. She'd approached that fake mage hoping to learn basic human knowledge, not realizing he was a fraud who couldn't even kill a slime. I asked if she'd ever harmed humans. She snapped to attention like a suspect in a police lineup. "Not one. I haven't even killed a chicken. I spent my whole life reading, painting, and learning etiquette." I told her to follow me to Cold City. She went white. "The hero is there, with the holy sword. One swing, and I'm dead." "He won't." "How do you know?" "I know him." She went through about 6 emotions in 3 seconds, then sighed with the resignation of someone who'd run out of options. "Fine. Worst case I get sword. But can I borrow a cloak?" Walking and dressed like demon royalty is basically a self-arrest. I pulled a cloak from my spatial storage. She caught it, stared at my bare hands. No storage ring, no bag, nowhere a cloak could have come from, and wisely chose not to ask questions. Probably afraid I'd punch the curiosity out of her. She introduced herself as Lilith and asked my name. I gave her my fake one. Li Feiyu? Weird name. What are we doing in Cold City? Business. What business? None of yours. She trotted after me, muttering. Great. No rights, no information, not even a warning before getting punched. This world is so unfair to demon girls. We walked toward the city gates as the sun went down. One reincarnated cultivator and one homeless demon princess. My life was getting increasingly ridiculous. At the city gate, Lilith froze up because her disguise ring was shattered by me, and she couldn't hide her demonic aura anymore. She tried the cute routine. You'd really let this adorable demon maiden get chopped into pieces? I just held out my hand. She immediately crouched down, covering her head, screaming apologies, thinking I was about to punch her again. But I cast an aura-sealing technique on her instead. No chant, no staff, just a thin layer of energy wrapping around her like invisible cling wrap. She asked what I used. I said, technique. She asked if it was a branch of magic, an ancient lost system, or something I made up. I said, yes. She asked which one. I said, all of them. She looked like she wanted to scream, but was too afraid of getting hit. Then she asked how long it would last. I said it wouldn't fail unless I died. She went quiet for a moment and whispered, could you please not die then? I dragged her into the Adventurers Association by the wrist. She was terrified, scanning every face in the room for threats. Nobody gave us a second glance. Guy in a cloak pulling a girl in a bigger cloak isn't exactly unusual here. At the counter, I turned in my slime quest, opened my palm, ripped a tiny hole in space, and dumped 53 crystal cores onto the counter from my internal storage dimension. The receptionist's yawn died mid-stretch. Storage. Magic? She managed. Yes, I said, not explaining that it was actually a spatial pocket carved inside my body using divine sense, a technique that has nothing to do with any magic system in this world. Something strangers don't need to know. Behind me, Lilith recognized what I'd done. In the demon realm, internal spatial refinement is a forbidden technique only prince-class demons and above can use, equivalent to a human grand mage. Her entire escape plan, which honestly never existed in the first place, officially died on the spot. Outside, I told her we were heading to a cheap inn. She went completely rigid. Apparently her brain went to a very different place than mine. She started imagining some whole scenario involving torn cloaks, pushed-up dresses, dungeon chains, and whips, pulled straight from trashy romance novels she'd secretly read as a kid about evil heroes corrupting innocent demon maidens. Her internal monologue spiraled into full panic until she mentally screamed at herself. No. Lilith refuses to have a corruption arc? Meanwhile, I was literally just looking for the cheapest room available because I'm broke from running a 5-person sect. Lilith threw a fit about going to a cheap inn. I said, no, and kept walking. She stomped her foot, internally raged about being a demon princess reduced to this, then trotted after me anyway, because what else was she going to do? The Molin was exactly as glamorous as it sounds. Peeling paint, crooked sign, a wooden mole carving that looked like a tiny hanged man swinging in the breeze. Lilith stood at the door like her feet were nailed to the ground. I walked in without looking back. She followed. One bed, one wardrobe, oil lamp, gray sheets with mysterious stains that looked like a water-damaged map. Peak accommodation. Then things got weird. She turned her back to me, dropped the cloak, and started unbuttoning her dress. Hands trembling, eyes closed, whispering, this is my first time. Please be gentle. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds of absolute silence. She cracked one eye open. I was standing 3 steps away, arms crossed, studying her with the same expression I used to analyze magical phenomena. Because when she started her little performance, I detected a faint magical fluctuation leaking from her body. Interesting. Magical power surging upward while blood chi flows downward. Are you demonstrating a racial ability? Her face went completely blank. I explained further. In case she didn't follow, I've heard that among demon races, there's a branch specializing in dual cultivation charm techniques. That must be the Nightmare Clan. When you removed your cloak just now, I detected a micropulse of magical energy. Were you attempting to activate a seduction spell? She opened and closed her mouth like a fish having an existential crisis. However, I continued, sitting cross-legged on the windowsill. Charm techniques are an external path. They rely on draining others, shallow, risky, dead-end cultivation with massive bottlenecks. I can't learn much from that approach. I look back at her. What I'm actually interested in is your clan's illusion abilities. Those target the soul directly, true Grandao territory. Mastered fully, a single thought can move mountains. A single dream can decide life and death. That would be worthy of your bloodline talent. I nodded at her politely. Could you demonstrate that for me instead? She just stood there, dress half unbuttoned, brain apparently hosting 100 slimes doing a simultaneous dance party, realizing that this man had interpreted her entire romantic sacrifice as a talent showcase and was now requesting a different presentation like a professor reviewing a thesis defense. Lilith was furious. She stomped her foot, rebuttoned her dress, and informed me with maximum indignation that charm techniques belong to the succubus clan, not the nightmare clan. We take the high-end route, illusions and hypnosis. Get your demon taxonomy straight before you speak. Thank you. I apologized sincerely. She looked even angrier. After cycling through her options, can't beat me, can't outrun me, can't out-argue someone whose brain operates on a completely different wavelength. She swallowed her pride and agreed to demonstrate her racial ability. But she had conditions. She only knew one spell, a lullaby hypnosis her mother taught her. She was rusty from months of running for her life. And I was absolutely not allowed to laugh. She closed her eyes. The room went dead silent. Wind stopped. Lamp flame froze. Everything held its breath. Then she opened those purple eyes, and they were different. Spiraling galaxies in her pupils, rotating like slow cosmic whirlpools. Look into my eyes, she whispered in a voice that seemed to float from somewhere far away. I looked, and I saw a universe. Stars everywhere, silver, purple, deep blue, scattered like someone spilled a jewelry box across infinite darkness. My body felt weightless, like something was pulling my consciousness out of my skin. But I wasn't falling for it. I was studying it. Every detail of how her magic flowed, how her spiritual power wove the illusion, the pathways the energy traveled, all recorded by my divine sense in perfect clarity. She was running this entirely on instinct, no technique whatsoever. Pure bloodline talent driving the whole thing like someone sprinting with their eyes closed. Fascinating. Then the stars started slowing down. Her breathing got longer. Her shoulders drooped. Her eyelids started losing their battle with gravity. She was hypnotizing me, but she was also hypnotizing herself. Sleep. Her voice faded to almost nothing. So sleepy, her eyes closed. She swayed like a little tree in the wind. Then her knees buckled, and she fell forward. I caught her. Her head landed on my shoulder, silver hair spilling everywhere, face still wearing that little smile. Breathing steady, heart rate normal, fast asleep. She demonstrated her ultimate racial ability and knocked herself out with it. I put her on the bed, pulled the covers over her, and she immediately rolled into a shrimp ball, hugging the blanket, mumbling, "All fire demons should die," in her sleep. So this is the Nightmare Clan's high-end route, I observed quietly. Back on the windowsill, I replayed everything in my mind. No technique, all talent, instinctive illusion weaving carved into her bloodline. But the principles were learnable. I closed my eyes, focused, and when I opened them again, my own pupils contained slowly rotating starfields. Faint, sparse, nothing like hers, but present. One glance at her sleeping form, and I'd already begun reverse engineering a racial ability that took the Nightmare Clan thousands of years to develop. The real prize wasn't the hypnosis itself. It was whether I could evolve it into an artificial, heart demon tribulation. The ultimate mental trial that separates cultivators who ascend from cultivators who explode. I sighed. I owe her a karmic debt now. Can't exactly stuff her into the human emperor banner as its primary soul anymore. What a headache. I sat on the windowsill running my heavenly cycles while she snored like a kitten behind me, occasionally sleep-talking. Li Feiyu, how the tables have turned. Eat this. The strong must ruthlessly humiliate the weak. Truly the high-end route of the demon aristocracy. Lilith woke up looking like a bird's nest with legs, saw me sitting on the windowsill where I'd been all night, and asked if I'd slept. I told her meditation counts as sleep. Then I helpfully informed her she'd talked in her sleep 7 times, 4 about wanting fire demons dead, 2 about cake, and 1 declaring, "Li Feiyu, your day has come." She turned 3 different colors and tried to pretend none of it happened by sitting up straight and declaring we should discuss business. So I showed her what she was dealing with. I held out my palm and cycled through all 7 elements. Fire shifting from orange to white to transparent blue, a crystal clear water sphere, a silent miniature tornado, a seed, sprouting into a purple flower in 3 seconds, a handful of captured sunlight, a chunk of solid darkness cut from the night sky itself, and a hair-thin lightning bolt crackling with ozone. 7 attributes. All of them. I told her I was roughly equivalent to a grand mage. Her brain visibly short-circuited as she replayed last night. The undressing, the please be gentle, the attempted hypnosis on a full attribute grand mage, the plan to secretly kick me in her sleep. Like an ant walking up to a dragon and announcing, "I'm going to bite you now," before yawning and passing out. I sat down and explained the situation. She'd shown me her Nightmare Clan ability. I'd studied it and learned from it. That created a karmic debt. Cultivators always repay debts. So I gave her 2 choices. First, become my disciple. I'm the sect master of Wind, Spirit, Moon, Shadow. 5 disciples already. You'd be number 6. I'll teach you real cultivation, not magic, something deeper. Long road, hard path, but you'd become truly powerful on your own. Before I could even mention option 2, she literally slid off the bed onto her knees in a full kowtow. Master, your disciple greets you. First option. First option. Whatever master says, I obey. Point east, I go east. Tell me to chase a dog. I won't accidentally chase a chicken instead. Then she added, voice cracking with emotion. Master, I'm all alone in this world. If you'll have me, I'd like to take care of you in your old age. I told her she hadn't heard option 2 yet. She said she didn't need to. I tried again. She refused harder. So I accepted her. She bounced up, threw on the cloak, checked her reflection, and asked if she looked presentable. For breakfast. At a cheap inn. I'm a Wind, Spirit, Moon, Shadow disciple now. Can't embarrass the sect. At the door she finally asked what the second option was. Help you become Demon King, I said without turning around. Her footsteps stopped. The puppet kind. Her footsteps stopped again. She speedwalked to catch up. Master, I feel extremely good about choosing option 1. Extremely. Cannot stress this enough. Outside, morning light stretched our shadows long across the street. Mine straight as a sword, hers bouncing around like a rabbit on caffeine. Master, what are we eating? Whatever. Can I have cake? I haven't had any in forever. Sure. And tarts, and egg rolls, and pudding, and cream puffs. She caught herself, realized she was ruining her image, and backpedaled. Haha, just kidding. I'm very low maintenance. Just porridge is fine. Really, I told her not to hold back. She's my disciple now, which makes her family. As long as it doesn't interfere with cultivation, I'll provide what I can. This is also why I'm perpetually broke despite being one of the strongest people on this continent. All my money goes to feeding disciples. Wow, master. Then I also want macarons and sandwiches and, she trotted behind me, hood up, smile wide, rattling off pastry names like a freed prisoner ordering their last meal in reverse. Half a year of running. Finally over. Her new master was weird, cold, completely oblivious to romance, and possibly had anger management issues. But he wasn't going to hand her over to anyone, and he'd let her eat cake. For a homeless demon princess, that was enough. I took Lilith to the fanciest restaurant in Cold City for her first real meal in half a year. She'd been surviving on half-eaten garbage apples and stale bread that could kill a goblin on impact. She timidly ordered 1 small cake, voice barely above a whisper. I took the menu and told the waiter, 1 of everything. Lilith thought she misheard. The waiter thought he misheard. I dropped a bag of gold coins on the counter and repeated myself. The waiter's spine immediately bent into a question mark of servitude, and we got the best window seat in the house. What followed was the happiest and most traumatic meal of her life. Plate 1. Delicious. Plate 2. Incredible. Plate 3. Getting full. Plate 4. Master, can I take a break? Plate 5. My stomach is elbowing my brain. Plate 6. She became a mechanical chewing zombie whose soul floated to the ceiling and watched in horror. Meanwhile, I sat across from her drinking cold tea, not eating anything. At my cultivation level, I don't actually need food, though I do eat occasionally to remind myself I'm still human and avoid becoming one of those web novel villains who lose their humanity chasing the Tao. She collapsed face down on the table, surrounded by 6 empty plates and 8 untouched ones, looking like melted butter. Master, when normal people say I want cake, you buy 1. Maybe 2. 3 is spoiling. You don't empty the entire bakery. I thought about it. She had a point. I'd genuinely never taken someone out to eat before. My disciples were either rich like Alina, or orphans I'd picked up who were grateful for anything. Formal restaurant dining was new territory. She lectured me that treating someone to a meal involves asking what they want and how much, not deploying the entire menu as carpet bombing. I told her she survived, so clearly it was fine. She nearly flipped the table. Master, you don't have to fulfill every dumb thing I say. I just like talking. I'll consider that. Can you take back what you said earlier about giving me whatever I want? No. Words spoken are water spilled. A sect master's promise to a disciple is law. That's not how words become law works. That's called death by overfeeding. If word gets out, people will think Wind Spirit Moon Shadow Sect is a comedy club. I sipped my tea and looked out the window. Kids chasing a fat cat on the cobblestone street. Flags snapping on the city walls. Then I spotted some familiar faces. I spotted the heroes' party heading straight for our restaurant. Golden hair, holy sword, the whole 5-person spotlight parade. I glanced at Lilith. Cloak secure, aura seal holding, 0 demonic energy leaking. Theoretically fine. Also a good chance to test my new disciple's mental fortitude. Pull your hood lower, I said calmly. She followed my gaze, saw the hero, and her soul left her body. Hero. She nearly launched off the chair like a startled cat. I pressed her shoulder down and pinned her in place. Sit, she sat, rigid as a museum statue, face red as a balloon, hands strangling her cloak ties under the table until her knuckles went white. Her brain immediately started running disaster simulations. Scenario 1. Holy sword flashbangs the room. She disintegrates. I sip tea and say, figured that would happen. Scenario 2. The elf sees through her cloak, yells, demon, she gets diced into mincemeat. I continue sipping tea. Scenario 3. She trips on the doorstep leaving, cloak falls off, silver hair flies everywhere, scene loops forever. In every scenario, she dies horribly, and I'm drinking tea. The door opened. She stopped breathing. Alexander walked in, scanned the room, noticed our table, specifically the mountain of empty plates, and his mouth twitched. The fire mage Mason peeked over his shoulder, eyes locking onto the dishes like a food-obsessed hawk. The elf Legolas entered last, silent as a leaf, and his gaze found me instantly. Recognized me. Said nothing. They sat 4 tables away. Close enough to hear laughter, far enough not to bother us. Lilith was vibrating in her chair like a tuning fork. She whispered without moving her lips, mosquito volume. Master. Did they sit down? How far? Is anyone looking? Is the sword glowing? Is the elf? For tables to your left rear. Nobody's watching. Sword isn't glowing. Are you done? She picked up her water glass with trembling fingers, sipped like she was defusing a bomb, then asked if she looked like a normal human girl who was definitely not a demon. Your hands are shaking. She shoved them into her pockets and started mentally chanting. I am a rock. I am a rock. I am ice. Ice doesn't shake. Ice only melts. Then she realized melting would be worse. She'd turn into Lilith sauce. Meanwhile, Legolas sat in his corner, noting that my breathing was identical to 2 days ago, and that the cloaked girl's heartbeat was racing like a terrified rabbit. But he chose not to dig deeper. Everyone has secrets. I sipped my cold tea. This was actually a decent training exercise for her. If she could survive lunch 4 tables from the hero without combusting, her Tao heart might have some potential after all. The hero's squad sat down 4 tables away and started ordering food. Mason, the fire mage, immediately fixated on our mountain of empty plates and started gossiping about how much the cloaked girl had eaten. Alexander told her to mind her own business. Legolas just sat there silently noting that my breathing was exactly the same as 2 days ago, which honestly, fair observation. Meanwhile, Lilith had basically become a vibrating statue. She whisper-screamed questions at me without moving her lips. Are they looking? Is the sword glowing? Is the elf scanning me? Am I going to die? I answered each one flatly. No, 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 and probably not. I had the waiter pack up all the untouched food. Lilith was amazed takeout existed. I told her wasting food damages your cultivation karma. She looked at me like I was insane, but also weirdly impressed. She asked if the hero would still spare her if he knew she was a demon. I said honestly I didn't know. She asked how I could be so calm. I told her, his sword isn't necessarily faster than me. Walking past their table to leave was the longest 3 steps of her life. She could feel the holy sword radiating through the scabbard like a miniature sun, burning straight into her bones. Her entire consciousness collapsed into a single thought on loop. I am a rock, I am a rock, I am a rock. She made it outside and nearly collapsed, gasping like a fish, asking me to confirm her heart was still beating. Then she asked if I could really outspeed the hero. I admitted I'd never actually fought him, so I didn't know for sure. Then why did you say it so confidently? I almost believed you. Can't lose on momentum. She stared at my back for 3 seconds, then started bouncing alongside me, chattering about whether leftover cake turns into a bun if you steam it, whether there's a spell for that, and whether I'd ever tried it. I said no to everything. She said I had no imagination. I agreed. Most of my actual brain power was busy reverse engineering nightmare clan illusion techniques into an artificial heart demon tribulation. But she didn't need to know that. She trotted behind me into the afternoon sun, hood half blown back, silver hair catching light, already planning tomorrow's menu despite having nearly died of overeating today. Weird, cold, violent, socially incompetent master who orders entire restaurants and answers everything in one word, but at least he shows up when it counts. For a runaway demon princess, that's apparently enough. Walking through town with 4 stacked takeout boxes, I realized I had a problem. My human emperor banner needed thousands more souls, and the best hunting grounds were in the Western Ridge Mountains, full of monsters. But my new disciple was a demon. Monsters and demons share the same linguistic root. Would watching me slaughter her distant cousins give her a heart demon that wrecked her cultivation? I stopped walking to address this. She almost crashed into my back. I told her I planned to hunt monsters and asked how she felt about it. She blinked, then immediately diagnosed what was happening. Master, are you worried I'll see you killing goblins, think of my demon brethren, and cry so hard it ruins your hunting efficiency? Pretty much, yes. She held up 3 fingers and delivered the most unexpectedly profound lecture I'd heard in 2 lifetimes. 1. Monsters have 0 intelligence. A goblin's entire brain runs on 3 programs: hungry, kill, and gurgle. They can't talk, write poetry, or play instruments under moonlight. 2. Monsters can't make cake. A species that can't even bake a small cake. How is it different from a rock? Demons have pastry chefs, bakeries, 300-year-old recipes. Goblins can't even light a fire. 3. And here her voice got quiet. Her father once told her that demons and monsters are both creations of the demon god, but the relationship is like humans and animals. Would you call someone heartless for eating a chicken leg? So master, you kill your monsters, I eat my cake. We're both fine. Also, she added, she didn't even like monsters. They used to steal her garbage food when she was homeless. I looked at her and thought, this girl has a heart of the innocent, 1 in 10,000. She instinctively knows what matters and what doesn't. No overthinking, no pretense. Rare quality in any world. She immediately ruined the moment by comparing me to a mother hen who tucks her chick under her wing and then insists, I'm not protecting you. I'm just testing my wings load capacity. She even invented a disease for me. Master's unique stubbornness syndrome. Symptoms include caring deeply while insisting you don't, and disguising every kind act as a cultivation strategy. You were definitely complimenting me just now in your head, she said smugly. Your observation skills are decent, I admitted. Obviously, half a year on the run. If I couldn't read people, I'd have been sold ages ago. She bounced along behind me, stepping on my shadow's head, and said, following you is pretty good. She was right. I wouldn't say it out loud, obviously. That's the syndrome talking. We headed for the Western Ridge Mountains, 3,000 miles of peaks, canyons, caves, and 300 years worth of invasive monsters that nobody bothered cleaning up. Perfect soul-harvesting territory. My divine sense scanned the mountain like an X-ray. Dragon spine ridges, intersecting river valleys, classic, wind gathering, chi collecting, formation. There was definitely a spiritual vein hidden in there somewhere. In every web novel ever written, impressive mountains always have spiritual veins. It's basically a rule of the universe. Lilith, meanwhile, was squatting at the trailhead poking a beetle with a stick, watching it flail its legs in the air, completely delighted. On the hike in, she asked approximately 47 questions. Could we avoid the ugly sticky monsters? No. Could I at least yell, "Ugly one incoming," so she could close her eyes? Ignored. How much did the cloak cost? Free. Would she have to pay if she ripped it? No. Was the sect issuing shoes? Also no. She tripped on roots twice, face-planted into a bush once, ate a leaf, spat it out, and asked if her embarrassing image in my eyes at least qualified as having an image at all. Yes, I confirmed. A embarrassing one. Good enough, she said cheerfully. She asked why I walked so steadily on terrible terrain. I gave her the real answer: center of gravity, even stride, synchronized breathing. She asked for the normal person version. I said, practice. She immediately stumbled on a loose rock. I didn't slow down for her. But after each stumble, my pace dropped by half a beat. Coincidence? Definitely not concern. That would be the syndrome talking. Half an hour in, we hit a pine forest. Straight trunks, thick canopy, smell of pine resin and rot. I stopped when I spotted fresh claw marks on a tree. 3 parallel gouges cut an inch deep into the wood. Cobalt claws. Lilith examined the marks, looked at her own fingers, and said, "Master, I think I should trim my nails shorter. Those weren't made by fingernails. I know. I just wanted to feel better about the situation." My divine sense swept forward. No large monsters within 100 yards above ground. But 3 feet below the surface, something was moving through the dirt. My divine sense stabbed into the dirt like a needle and woke up something unpleasant. A 6-foot rock spider burst from the ground. 8 legs, bumpy armor plating, 3 rows of hooked teeth. C-rank monster. Nightmare fuel for normal adventurers. I didn't even stand up. Just pressed my palm down, crushed it with invisible force until its legs buckled and its joints popped like bubble wrap, then flicked a hair-thin beam of white light into the gap between its head and abdomen, the thinnest part of its shell, right where the nerve center lives. It spasmed once and died like a puppet with cut strings. The human emperor banner gulped down its soul without me even asking. Total time, 3 breaths. Behind me, Lilith was crouching with her hands over her eyes, peeking through finger gaps like a kid watching a horror movie. Is it over? Yes. She cautiously walked over and kicked one of the spider legs with her toe. The leg twitched from residual nerve impulses. She screamed and jumped backward. It's still moving. Nerve reflex. Whatever you say, master. Then she asked the smart question I'd been waiting for. Why was a Grand Mage-level cultivator wasting time killing C-rank trash mobs in the mountains? I told her about the human emperor banner. It needs souls to power up. 10,000 of them. She did mental math, counting on her fingers, and arrived at the correct conclusion that I was planning industrial-scale monster extermination. But master, you're a Grand Mage. Why not kill high-level monsters? One of those souls would be worth hundreds of these little ones. This is so inefficient. Good question. Genuinely impressed she thought of it. The banner's weapon spirit was still too weak to digest powerful souls, like feeding steak to a baby. Had to build up gradually with small fry first. Then she had a horrifying realization. Wait, when you first found me, were you planning to turn me into the weapon spirit? I put on my most offended face. What nonsense, she relaxed, hand on chest, sighing with relief. Probably thinking her beauty and charm had saved her. With your current cultivation level, you'd only qualify as a secondary soul at best, I clarified helpfully. Once you get stronger, we can discuss upgrading you to weapon spirit. The relief evaporated from her face like water on a hot pan. 30 years in the demon realm. 30 years in the human world. Don't bully a young girl just because she's weak. She planted her hands on her hips, then added, also, I do not want to be a weapon spirit. Fair enough. I wasn't actually going to do it anyway. She was my disciple now. But that quote of hers sounded suspiciously familiar. Time for a teaching moment. I asked her if she knew why villains in cultivation stories always get killed by protagonists. She shook her head. Because villains love to wait, I explained, walking deeper into the forest. When the protagonist is at chi refining stage, the villain is at golden core. The villain says, a mere chi refiner isn't worth my effort, and sends minions instead, who conveniently deliver experience points. Protagonist reaches foundation establishment. Villain still sitting there. Let him bounce around a few more days. Protagonist hits golden core. Now the villain finally moves. But by then the protagonist has trump cards, lucky encounters, and plot armor. Villain gets destroyed and dies screaming impossible. I could have killed you ages ago. I held a branch aside to let Lilith pass through. She got her hood snagged on a twig and flailed around detangling herself. So master, you're saying you're playing the villain role? Wrong. I'm playing the protagonist who doesn't wait. The one who's decisive. When a threat appears, you crush it immediately. No monologues, no underestimating, no giving them room to grow. In a proper cultivation world, a golden core expert crossing realms to kill a talentless chi refiner who crossed his sect should be standard procedure. She processed this while stumbling over rocks behind me. I could practically hear the gears turning. In the demon realm, strong killing weak is normal, but no demon lord would personally squash goblins. Not out of kindness, but out of pride. A demon king crushing ants? The whole realm would laugh. But my logic was different. I don't live for face. I live for the Tao. Reputation is for other people. What matters is whether your Tao heart stays stable. So master, she said, catching up excitedly, you're basically someone who carved caution into his bones. No matter how weak the opponent, you personally confirm they're dead. That's one way to put it. What happens if someone offends you? Kill them immediately. No second chances? None. She went quiet. I'm pretty sure she was mentally repeating, "Never offend master," on loop. Then she noticed something. The human emperor banner was trembling at my hip, wisps of dark smoke curling off the surface. Not fire smoke, more like ink dropped into water, rising and dissolving into nothing. Master, your banner. Why is it smoking black? Lilith noticed the human emperor banner was leaking dark smoke. She asked about it. I told her calmly that it wasn't smoke. It was primordial chaos chi, the foundational energy from when heaven and earth first separated, the root of all creation, the source of the great Tao. It just happened to look exactly like chimney smoke. Master, she said, staring at the wispy black stuff curling off the banner with obvious skepticism. I haven't read many books, but I've seen plenty of treasures in the demon realm. Normal treasures glow gold, silver, rainbow light. Yours glows chimney. Are you sure the souls inside aren't running a furnace? I kept walking. You don't understand. The great Tao values simplicity. True primordial energy always looks unremarkable. Just like a golden core cultivator looks no different from a regular person. It also smells like burnt hair mixed with rotten leaves. I smelled it. My nose is excellent. Half a year of homelessness, I could identify what flavor a bakery 3 streets away was making. I chose not to engage further and picked up the pace. The forest got darker and denser. Ground went from gravel to rotting leaves to wet moss. Sunlight broke into scattered fragments through the canopy. The air started to stink, not normal forest rot, but something heavier, more metallic. Like something had died here a long time ago and never fully decomposed. Lilith covered her nose. Master, it reeks. I stopped. Ahead was a clearing, or what used to be one. Now it was waist-high blackened grass with curled edges. Scattered among the weeds were pale white bones. Human leg bones, broken at jagged angles, covered in teeth marks. 20 steps further, a cave entrance. Irregular oval shape, about 1 person tall, edges worn smooth from years of traffic. The ground around it was littered with more bones, mouse-sized, cow-sized, and unmistakably human finger bones and ribs, gleaming sickly white in the afternoon sun. From deep inside came a low, rhythmic, guh sound. I stood at the entrance and didn't rush in. I looked up at the sky, then down at the bones. The scraps of clothing looked like adventurer gear. Then I straightened my spine, put one hand behind my back, struck my best dramatic pose. Think Michael Jackson's power stance from a previous life, and addressed the cave. It was not I who brought ruin upon you. It was the raiding army from 300 years ago. Lilith stood 3 steps behind me, head tilted, wearing her signature, "My master is having another episode," expression. I continued my speech to the cave full of monsters that definitely couldn't understand human language. You were never supposed to be here. Never supposed to attack passing adventurers. 300 years ago, the demon army brought you to this land. You had no choice. Born here, raised here, died here, but this was never your home. I paused, shook my head solemnly. You are an invasive species. But the fault of invasive species doesn't lie with the species itself. It lies with whoever brought them. From behind me. Master, are you giving kobolds end-of-life counseling? Can they even understand you? No. Then are you doing this for your mental health? No. For yours. Mine? So you understand. I'm not killing them because I enjoy killing. I'm killing them because they shouldn't be here. She sort of nodded. Okay, master, carry on. I turned back to the cave. Today I send you on your way. If there's a next life, be reborn in the demon realm. That's where you belong. I extended my palm, fingers spread, and pushed gently. An almost invisible ripple expanded from my hand toward the cave mouth. The moment it touched the darkness, everything went silent. The guh sound stopped. Wind stopped. Leaves froze. Grass didn't sway. Even the air seemed to solidify. That silence lasted less than 1 second. Then came a rapid series of muffled pff sounds from deep inside, like things popping in the dark, one after another, rolling outward like a drum roll bouncing off cave walls, getting closer and denser. Lilith stood on tiptoes trying to see inside. Nothing visible, but she could smell it. Thick, fresh, iron-tinged blood pouring out of the entrance mixed with dirt and something like gunpowder. Master, how many did that one palm kill? Didn't count. Roughly, 100-something. She looked down at her own hands. Pale, delicate, couldn't even climb a tree. Master, I want to learn that. Sure. Later, I stayed at the entrance while the banner did its work. It unfurled automatically, flapping in non-existent wind. Green soul light poured from the cave in streams. Dozens and dozens of glowing threads pulled into the black fabric like a luminous river flowing into a dark sea. Lilith could see the whole thing clearly. A river of green light flooding out of darkness into my banner. It lasted several minutes before thinning to a trickle, then just scattered wisps. The banner's runes flashed multiple times, each flash accompanied by a deep hum. The soul mark on the edge grew from a dot to the size of a rice grain. I frowned. Not enough. Efficiency is still too low, 100 plus, and it's not enough. How many souls does this thing need to be full? 10,000. Currently at 600. She did the math in her head, looked at the banner, and her expression shifted from curiosity to genuine awe. Are there more kobold nests in these mountains? Yes. Then let's keep going. We walked a few steps before she piped up again. Master, that speech you gave at the cave entrance, it wasn't me who harmed you one. Are you going to do that every time you kill monsters? Depends. On my mood. Could you at least switch up the script? Maybe something like, today I send you to paradise. May you be law-abiding citizens in your next life? I didn't respond. But I was considering it. Variety does keep the Tao heart fresh. After clearing 3 kobold nests and assorted trash mobs, bringing my soul count to about 900, Lilith was falling asleep on her feet. Half a year of survival instincts had programmed her body to shut down at sundown. She was doing that thing where you pretend you're totally awake by standing extra straight while your eyelids are basically on strike. She asked about sleeping arrangements. Some nice dry cave maybe. Nothing fancy, just no spiders, please. I said we were going back to the inn. She pointed out Cold City was dozens of miles away, and we'd be walking until dawn. So I tore open space with 2 fingers. Just a casual little rip in the fabric of reality. Blue light at the edges, absolute void in the middle, cold wind leaking out carrying the scent of nothingness. Standard stuff. Lilith's yawn froze mid-stretch. Her eyes went completely round, mouth still hanging open like a broken mailbox. You tore the sky open with your bare hands. Spatial rift. Leads to Cold City. Let's go. I stepped through. She stood outside having a 3-way argument between her brain, her instincts, and her bladder. Brain said follow master. Instinct said run. Even demon high priests don't mess with spatial rifts. Fear informed her she'd already lost control of certain bodily functions, just in solid form so nobody could tell. I called out, hurry up, from inside the void. She squeezed her eyes shut and dove in head first. She described the sensation later as being folded like a piece of paper, then stuffed into an envelope. It lasted about 1 second. Then she was standing in our in-room. Same bed, same wall, same window, same broken floorboard that squeaks when you step on it. Squeak, it confirmed. I zipped the rift closed behind us with 1 finger, like pulling a zipper, and everything went back to normal, as if nothing had happened. Her knees gave out. She sank down holding the bed frame, silver hair hanging like a waterfall, mouth moving but producing 0 sound. Her brain was stuck on a single loop. How strong is this man? When she finally rebooted, she asked what that technique was called. Minor displacement art, I said. Lets me teleport within 100 miles to places I've already visited. She nearly hit the ceiling. Minor? You call ripping space apart minor? What's the major version? Relocating an entire city? I thought about it. More or less. Major displacement art can move cities across countries. One step, 1,000 miles. But the energy cost is too high. I can't sustain it long at my current level. She crouched on the floor, hugging her knees, staring up at me like a cat that just witnessed its owner defy physics. In the demon realm, she said slowly, spatial magic requires magic circles, magic crystals, multiple archmages chanting together until their mouths cramp, just to open a portal barely big enough to walk through. She made a tearing gesture in the air. You just went RIP and done. If humans could all do this, she realized, the demon race was truly and completely screwed. I corrected her, not magic. Cultivation technique. Different system entirely. She asked what cultivation actually was. I sat on the windowsill in the moonlight and gave her the short version. Cultivation means cultivating truth, refining body, refining divine sense, refining Tao heart. The goal is transcending mortality, achieving eternal life, controlling creation and destruction, toying with the universe itself. Magic is borrowing, taking power from heaven and earth. Cultivation is becoming, transforming yourself until you are the power. A mage scoops water from a river. A cultivator digs a well inside themselves. The deeper you dig, the more water you store. Eventually, you don't need the river anymore. You are the river. She asked if the spatial rip used my own internal energy. Yes, not borrowed from the world. Hear me. Her eyes got huge again. How much internal power do you need to rip open space? That's space, not paper. Golden Core Peak can barely manage a rift within 1 mile, I told her. Further than that requires external tools. She went quiet, doing mental comparisons. Her father, the Demon King, at full power, without forbidden spells, could destroy 1/3 of the Demon King's castle. But casually tearing space? She'd never seen it. Never even heard of anyone in the demon realm doing it. Master, be honest. What level are you really? Grand Mage? Or higher? I considered the question. In this world system, above Grand Mage is Holy Mage, above that is Demigod. I'm probably somewhere between Grand Mage and Holy Mage. Probably haven't fought this world's top fighters yet. Hard to be sure. She stood up, brushed non-existent dust off her dress, sat on the bed with perfect posture, and asked her very important question. Master, did you take me as a disciple partly because I'm pretty? I looked at her with an expression that communicated absolutely nothing except, why are you wasting my time with this? She waited. Got no response. Coughed awkwardly. Fine, not that. Then what? My talent? My nightmare bloodline. Because I can help you with something? The real answer was complicated. Karmic debt, her illusion abilities, potential for heart demon tribulation research, and the fact that her heart of the innocent quality was genuinely rare. But most of my active brain power was still busy reverse engineering her racial techniques into artificial tribulations, so I just sat there in moonlit silence looking mysterious. Which, honestly, is the best response a sect master can give. When in doubt, say nothing and let the disciple fill in the blanks with something profound. Works every time. Lilith asked me why I really took her as a disciple. I'd been turning this over in my head, and the honest answer wasn't her talent or her bloodline or her looks. Because you asked me if you could ever trust anyone again. She went still. That fake mage abandoned you. The slimes nearly killed you. You stood there, fists clenched, and asked a stranger whether people were worth believing in. I didn't answer at the time. I looked at her from the windowsill, moonlight crawling up my chest. Now I'm answering. Yes, you can. Trust me. The room went so quiet I could hear the moon moving. Lilith sat on the bed with her head down, silver hair curtaining her face. Her shoulders were shaking, but she wasn't crying. She was doing that thing where you're trying very hard not to cry, which honestly takes more strength than just letting it happen. After a while, her muffled voice floated out. Master, you're so awkward. You're saying something genuinely emotional, but your face looks like you're explaining tax law. You're going to die single. Cultivators don't do conventional marriage. At most, we seek a Tao companion. That's even more awkward. You know what this is called in storybooks? It's called raising a flag. Characters who talk like this usually don't survive to the finale. That's other people's finale. I write my own. She lifted her head. Red eyes. She stared at the moonlit silhouette on the windowsill and seemed to arrive at some conclusion she hadn't expected. He really might make it to the finale. And the bonus chapters too. Then she negotiated teleportation terms. Apparently, the minor displacement art made her feel like she was folded into a piece of tofu. She wanted a countdown next time. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Situation so she could brace her heart. I agreed. Seemed reasonable. She pulled the covers over half her face, one purple eye peeking out. Good night, Master. Aren't you afraid I'll ambush you in your sleep? You're welcome to try. No thanks. I'm afraid you'll punch me across the room on reflex. Fair assessment. I closed my eyes and started cycling heavenly circuits. Meanwhile, and I only pieced this together later from various sources, the heroes' party was having a very different kind of evening. Upstairs in the Adventurers Association, behind thick oak doors that blocked out all the downstairs noise, Alexander and his team were hunched over a giant sheepskin map covered in red ink circles and arrows. The Demon King's vanguard army had pushed to within 120 miles west of the mountain range 3 days ago. Latest intelligence had them setting up camp and mobilizing for another push. Alexander's calculation: 5 days until they reached the Crossroads River Junction, the intersection of 3 trade routes. If the demons took that position, the supply line between the western frontier and the capital would be severed. The plan was surgical. The Church's Holy Knight Order would feign attack the western line to draw the demon army's main force. The kingdom's 3rd Legion would loop around from the north to cut off retreat. And while everyone was distracted, the heroes' party would punch through to the demon commanders and take their heads. Mason summarized it elegantly by making a throat-slitting gesture. The dwarf Bruno understood that version perfectly and laughed about finally getting to fight something. Legolas, who hadn't spoken a single word the entire meeting, pointed out that demon commanders wouldn't camp in open terrain. They'd pick forests, valleys, or abandoned mines. Hard to scout. Alexander asked if the elf could get close enough to find weak points in their defense. Legolas said yes, but he needed 2 days. 3 days until departure. Alexander assigned roles like a conductor arranging an orchestra, Bruno on frontline breakthrough, Mason on ranged fire support, Anna on healing and holy suppression, himself and Legolas on the kill strike into the command core. Everyone agreed. Candles flickered on golden hair. Blue eyes reflected twin flames. The hero's voice carried that natural magnetism that makes you believe things will work out even when the math says otherwise. Outside, the city's torches traced a fire dragon along the walls. Far to the west, demon campfires burned in the dark. 2 sets of flames staring at each other across hundreds of miles of nothing. I knew none of these specifics at the time, of course. I was sitting on a windowsill running cultivation cycles while a demon princess sleep-talked about cake 3 feet away from me. But I could feel it, a shift in the air. The western frontier had been tense since I arrived, but tonight the tension had teeth. Something was building. The kind of pressure that precedes either a breakthrough or a collapse. The hero was preparing for war. The Demon King's army was advancing. The church, the kingdom, the adventurers, everyone was positioning pieces on a board I hadn't been invited to play on. Not yet, anyway. I opened one eye and looked out the window at the distant wall fires. My human emperor banner still needed thousands more souls. My cultivation was stuck at Golden Core Peak, half a step from nascent soul. My sect had 5 disciples back east and 1 snoring demon princess in this room. My funds were nearly gone. And somewhere out there, forces were moving that could reshape this entire continent. Not my war, I told myself. Not yet. But the Tao has a way of making things your business whether you plan for it or not. I closed my eye and went back to cycling. From the bed, Master. The cake turned into a bun after all. Told you so. I chose not to respond. Checking out of the mole in was an experience. The room looked like a war zone. Sheets crumpled into origami. Blanket balled up in a corner, pillow on the floor covered in silver hair, 6 empty plates with fossilized cake residue on the table. The innkeeper asked if we'd thrown a party. I told her my disciple eats enthusiastically. Lilith shrank into her hood, so deep only her burning red ear tips were visible. She'd gotten hungry at midnight and snuck out of bed to eat leftover cake in the dark, then nearly had a heart attack when she noticed I was sitting there with my eyes open the whole time. I grabbed the deposit, handed the coins to Lilith, and then teleported us to the Western Ridge Mountains without warning. Again, she'd specifically asked for a countdown. I'd specifically agreed to give one. I specifically didn't. Her stomach relocated to her left shoulder and back. She opened her eyes, standing on forest floor instead of cobblestones, swaying like a drunk sailor, and politely requested, for the second time, that I please announce teleportation in advance. I said, okay, for real this time. She pointed out I said the exact same thing yesterday. Fair point. We pushed deeper into the mountains than yesterday's outer perimeter. About an hour in, I stopped. My divine sense had picked up something different from the usual monster signatures. Not monsters. Demons. 12 of them, 300 paces ahead in a mountain hollow. The strongest was around Foundation establishment level, high-rank mage, in local terms. The rest were chi refining nobodies. Lilith went rigid. Demons? Not monsters? Correct. You're sure? My divine sense doesn't make mistakes. She immediately assumed they were hunting her. I told her no, their formation was too organized for a search party. They were looking for something specific. My divine sense caught fragments of their conversation. Dragon bone, dragon aura, 300 miles east. These demons were tracking a dragon. Lilith looked at the mountain with fresh terror. There are dragons in here. Unknown. But they're looking for one. My brain instantly shifted into opportunity assessment mode. Dragons in cultivation lore are top-tier existences. Their bones, blood, and souls contain power that most cultivators would kill entire sects to obtain. If these demons found a living dragon, they'd serve as excellent scouts and cannon fodder. If they found ruins or remains, there might be treasures worth investigating. We follow them, I decided. Let them do the legwork. We swoop in after. Lilith stared at me for 3 full seconds, confirming I wasn't joking. Master, you, a human, are taking me, a fugitive demon princess, to stalk a demon squad, looking for a dragon. Do you see any problems with this plan? No. Think harder. Don't need to. She sighed the sigh of someone who has accepted that their master is fundamentally unhinged and there's no cure. She asked how we'd follow without being spotted. I told her my aura concealment technique covered everything within 100 yards. If I didn't want them to find us, they wouldn't. She crouched behind a pine tree, wrapped in her cloak with only her eyes showing, and whispered that I should lead the way. As we started tailing the demon squad through the forest, she asked the obvious question, Master, why do you want to find a dragon? I answered without turning around. I'd like to exchange parenting tips. 3 seconds of silence. Oh, that makes son. Wait. What? I kept walking. She scrambled after me, brain presumably melting. But honestly, it was a legitimate interest. I had 6 disciples now across my sect. Dragons are famously protective parents who raise their young for centuries. If any species in this world understood long-term student development, it was them. Also, a dragon soul would be worth roughly 5,000 regular monster souls for the human emperor banner. But I kept that part to myself. Some things disciples don't need to know until the appropriate moment in their cultivation journey. Or ever, really. Lilith's brain short-circuited when I mentioned parenting tips. She assumed I had kids, then panicked about how that was possible without a partner. I cut her off before she could theorize something involving slime reproduction. 5 disciples. My 5th disciple hasn't hatched yet. Hatched? Yes. My 5th disciple is an egg. A dragon egg, specifically. I found it 3 years ago in a dead volcano near Viscount Pompey's territory, right after I broke through to the Purple Mansion stage. No dragon nest nearby, no dragon aura, no signs of anything. Just an egg sitting alone in a crater like someone forgot it there. I tried everything to help it hatch: spiritual energy nurturing, chi-gathering formations, magic crystal arrays. Nothing worked. It just sat there being an egg. But here's the thing. Every time I taught cultivation lectures to my other disciples, the egg responded. Faint spiritual fluctuations during key points. And once, when I was recounting ancient human legends and reached the line, I am the heavenly emperor, and I shall suppress all enemies, the entire egg literally shook. Every disciple in the room saw it. So yes, the egg attends class. It has no ears, no eyes, no mouth. It perceives through divine sense. 3 years of lectures absorbed through its shell. If that doesn't qualify as a student, I don't know what does. Lilith processed all of this while crouching on a fallen log, hugging her knees, wearing what I can only describe as a reconsidering all life choices expression. So your plan is to walk up to a dragon and say hi. I have an egg that won't hatch. Any advice? Correct. And the dragon will just help. If it's willing, I'll be polite. If it's not willing, I pause for effect. I also know some martial arts. She reminded me that I'd said, you can't force the Tao. I told her that's a separate matter entirely. Seeking the Tao is seeking the Tao. Subduing a dragon is subduing a dragon. If a dragon stands between me and the answers I need, then the dragon becomes the problem, not the Tao. The Tao doesn't disappear just because a dragon refuses to talk about it. She stared at my back for a while and said, Master, that's a dragon. Alive. Breathes fire. Flies. I'm aware. What if you can't beat it? I glanced at her. She read the look correctly. Are you joking? If I can't beat it, I'll deal with that then. But until I've tried, can't beat it doesn't exist. The egg conversation inevitably derailed into Lilith's real concern, food security. She wanted to know if the dragon, once hatched, would compete with her for cake. I told her dragons eat spiritual energy, not pastries. She relaxed, then immediately tensed up again. But what if it develops a taste for cake after hatching? Can I out-eat a dragon? You probably can't even crack its eggshell right now. Master, that's genuinely hurtful. It's the truth. I could practically see her imagining the scene. A glowing egg hovering over the dining table, cakes vanishing one by one through pure divine sense consumption, no mouth, no hands, just silent psychic eating. She shuddered. Somewhere during this conversation, I realized Lilith had correctly identified what I was really after. The egg was important, sure, but the deeper reason I wanted to find a dragon was knowledge. Dragons live thousands of years. Their memories stretch back to eras this world has forgotten. They might know things about the origin of magic, the relationship between demons and humans, and most critically, the true nature of heaven's law in this world. Those answers could be the key to my breakthrough from golden core to nascent soul, and possibly the key to understanding whether this world's Tao is the same one I pursued in my previous life or something entirely different. Lilith figured this out on her own. Smart girl. She asked if the egg would resent me for potentially beating up its own species. I told her no. It listened to 3 years of Tao lectures. The Tao teaches cause and effect, root and branch. If it couldn't distinguish between purposeless violence and pursuing truth, then those 3 years were wasted. She went quiet after that, then asked, does the egg have ears? No. Then how does it listen to lectures? Divine sense perception. So it doesn't need ears to learn. Does that mean after hatching it won't need a mouth to eat? Will it eat through divine sense? Will it steal my cake through telekinesis? I didn't answer. Some questions resolve themselves with time. She also asked about the other sect members. Who else was in Wind, Spirit, Moon, Shadow besides me, her, and the egg? That was a fair question. My sect currently consisted of me, Sect Master, Golden Core Peak, Chronic Poverty, a first disciple I'd picked up in the Viscounty, a second disciple who was apparently an emotionless prodigy, a third and fourth I'd gathered during my adventures, the egg, fifth disciple, 3 years of attendance, 0 participation, and now Lilith, sixth disciple, demon princess, professional cake enthusiast. 6 disciples, 1 egg, 0 budget, a protective formation powered by discount magic crystals, and a sect name, Wind, Spirit, Moon, Shadow, that I'd chosen because it sounded prestigious and ancient, despite the sect being roughly 6 years old and headquartered in what was essentially a renovated cave. I briefly considered whether bringing a demon princess to potentially fight a dragon while stalking a demon squad counted as responsible sect management. Then I decided that in cultivation, fortune favors the bold, and kept walking. Behind me, Lilith was still muttering about egg-based cake theft. Lilith asked about my other disciples. Fair enough. She's part of the family now. Might as well know who she's living with. First disciple, Sherry. Found her on the roadside. She was wrestling a full-grown brown bear. Bare hands. She won. Lilith's face went through several stages of processing failure. She won. Against a bear, the bear ran. She chased it for 2 miles trying to become sworn siblings with it. I'm still not entirely sure what species Sherry is. Probably human, just with slightly above average strength. By slightly, I mean, she can punch the main gate of Cold City clean off its hinges. Lilith looked at her own fist, squeezed it, released it, and silently resolved to stand very straight and say nothing when meeting her senior sister. Second disciple, Ophelia, half-elf, found her at the border of the elven court, lost in the forest for 3 days, crouching under a tree eating bark. Eating bark? Very elegantly, though. Every bite perfectly even. More refined than your hypnosis technique. She'd run away from home. Her father was elven nobility, her mother human, and the court wasn't kind to half-breeds. Her specialty is divination and prophecy. Extremely accurate. How accurate? Once she predicted it will rain tomorrow. It rained. Lilith waited for more. Nothing came. Thought that's it? She said it in a desert. Lilith went quiet. She mentally added, ask second senior sister to predict lifetime cake consumption to her priority list, then caught herself losing ambition and expanded it to include tarts, macarons, creme brulee, lava cake, cream puffs, and donuts. Third disciple, Alice, daughter of the Eastern Grand Duke. My tone shifted slightly here. Certain memories are mildly unpleasant. She wasn't found. She found us. Heard about Wind Spirit Moon Shadow sect somewhere. Thought hidden ancient sect sounded cool. Left a note saying gone to cultivate immortality, don't miss me, and ran away. The Grand Duke sent an entire night order to find her. She hid in a cave behind the sect for 3 days. Then what? Knights left. She emerged saying, finally, peace for cultivation. Then discovered I'd taken everyone on a training expedition. She waited in the cave for another 7 days. She didn't think to leave contact information. She said cultivators must sever worldly ties. But she didn't even confirm the sect's address before showing up. Hence why I say she doesn't think things through. Alice had genuine talent, though. Learned spells instantly, mastered them quickly, then immediately got overconfident. Once she practiced a new fire technique behind the sect, merged with a strange flame wrong, and burned down half a mountain. After standing in the ashes, she said, the way of fire should be thus. I made her copy the Tao Te Ching 100 times. Did she? Yes. She burned each character onto iron plates using fire magic. Every stroke perfectly scorched. Lilith imagined a girl standing before iron sheets, fingertips shooting flames, calligraphy burning her punishment while a charred mountainside smoked behind her. She asked if the third disciple's brain was a little off, not a little. Very. When even I, a man who ate poison mushrooms for cultivation breakthroughs and punches trucks, thinks someone's abnormal, they're genuinely abnormal. Fourth disciple. I paused, choosing words carefully. She's ordinary. No magic power, no talent, no special abilities whatsoever. Then why? Because she was standing. My voice went flat. Her village was massacred by monsters. Everyone dead. She was the last one alive, holding a fire poker, covered in blood, facing over a dozen kobolds at the village entrance. She hadn't moved one step backward. When I arrived, she could barely stand from the bites. But she was still swinging that poker. I killed the kobolds. She looked at me and said, can you teach me to be strong? I told her she had no cultivation talent. She said, then I'll train 10 times harder. I said 10 times might not be enough. She said, then 100 times. So I took her in, partly because her setup was textbook protagonist origin story, and I wanted to experience being the mysterious elder who hands the hero their golden finger. But that part stays between me and the universe. Lilith's throat tightened. She was thinking about her own escape. Running, hiding, never once standing her ground against anything. She'd never had the courage to face a dozen monsters with a stick. She asked the fourth disciple's name. Jenny. Then she was quiet for a long time. I think she finally understood what Wind Spirit Moon Shadow sect really is. Not a comedy troupe. Not a hidden ancient order. It's a place for people who have nowhere else to go. Doesn't matter if you're strong or weak, human or egg. If you're willing to stay, you can stay. She asked if she could meet them someday. I said yes. Once she learned proper aura concealment, so the first disciple's presence wouldn't knock her unconscious on sight. Apparently a D-rank adventurer once wandered near the sect, saw Sherry one-handing a steel coil, and fainted on the spot. Lilith immediately promoted, learn aura concealment, to maximum priority. As we continued tracking the demon squad through the forest, she asked whether the egg, once hatched, would look down on ordinary disciples like her. No, It was raised on the Tao, and the Tao doesn't discriminate. Then she asked me to pass along a message to the egg. Your senior sister is waiting for you to hatch, so she can take you out for cake. You're the junior sister, I corrected. Details. I don't want to be the lowest rank. Meanwhile, far to the west, events were accelerating beyond my awareness. In the 3rd Legion's command tent, General von Mack stood over a sand table covered in crystal pieces representing troop positions, reading Alexander's proposal for a surgical strike against the demon commanders instead of a frontal assault. The general set down the silver chess piece representing the hero's party, placed it in an unremarkable corner of the board, and spoke words that landed like cast iron on every officer present. I don't understand. War was coming. The hero was preparing his strike. The military was positioning forces. And I was deep in the mountains, stalking demons, hunting for a dragon, carrying a soul-eating banner, accompanied by a cake-obsessed demon princess, trying to figure out how to hatch an egg. Priorities. While Lilith and I were stalking demons through the mountains, the political situation out west was apparently imploding in spectacular fashion. I only learned the details later, but here's what happened. General von Mack, commander of the 3rd Legion, was having what I can only describe as a glory days meltdown in his command tent. He stood over a sand table covered in crystal chess pieces, launched into a dramatic monologue about ancient battles, and kept asking why everyone was talking about some general named Eric who got his entire army wiped out at a place called Ashen Valley 250 years ago. Then he announced that the upcoming battle was 100,000 versus 80,000. Advantage is OURS. Alexander burst into the tent uninvited, still dripping with night dew, and politely pointed out that the demon vanguard's 80,000 weren't a disorganized mob. They had proper command structure, siege equipment, and supply lines. A head-on battle would be a Pyrrhic victory at best, and the whole point was to stop the demons from advancing east, not trade bodies. The general asked how many 10,000-man battles Alexander had commanded. 0. The general had commanded 7. Won 4, lost 3. The 3 losses? All because he listened to elite strike team proposals. Then the real reason came out. The prime minister back in the capital needed a military victory that belonged to him. Not the hero, not the church, not the elves. If Alexander's surgical strike ended the war, the credit would go to everyone except the politicians. So the general had orders to ensure the 3rd Legion won a proper, photogenic, vote-worthy battle. Alexander and his holy sword were welcome to exist, just not to finish things before the army got its moment. You win, it's your glory, the general said quietly. You lose, it's the military's incompetence. You'll never understand what it's like for us old men walking on thin ice in the capital. Alexander's eyes narrowed. He got the message. The general wasn't crazy, he was trapped. A puppet whose strings led all the way back to a prime minister counting votes. The young hero said he wouldn't interfere with the general's battle, but he also wouldn't let frontline soldiers die for nothing. Then he walked out. Mason, the fire mage, was furious. 100,000 versus 80,000? He counted the logistics workers and the wagon drivers. Actual combat troops are under 50,000. Alexander didn't argue. He just looked up at the North Star, the one they called the Hero's Star, half hidden behind clouds like a half-closed eye. Then he made his call. Plan unchanged. The general fights his battle, the hero's party fights theirs. Hopefully between the two approaches, unnecessary deaths could be minimized. Mason smiled at his back. Now that sounds like you. They walked into the darkness together. Behind them, in the command tent, the silver chess piece representing the hero's party sat alone on the sand table, surrounded by a sea of black pieces. A tiny star dropped into darkness. Faint, but not yet extinguished. The general watched it and whispered, "Let's hope you're not the second Eric." Meanwhile, I was 1,000 miles from caring about any of this. We'd been tailing the demon squad for nearly a full day. Lilith was half asleep on her feet, dragging herself through underbrush, whining at increasingly creative frequencies. "Master, we've been following them all day. I'm so sleepy." I didn't respond. Focusing on tracking. "Master, what if you drop the aura seal on me and I walk up to them and say, 'Hello, I am a lost demon princess. Please build me a luxury tent and bring me 2 small cakes. When I reclaim the demon throne, I'll make you a general.' How about that?" I thought about it for exactly 1 second. Then I nodded and snapped my fingers, releasing her concealment seal. She froze. Wait, you actually did it? Here's the thing. I'd been wanting to extract information from those demons via soul searching for hours. But with my disciple watching, I couldn't exactly walk up and rip their memories out through their eyeballs. Wind Spirit Moon Shadow Sect is a prestigious Orthodox sect. We have standards. We don't do dark arts in front of the junior members. But if Lilith walked out there on her own initiative, revealed herself, created a commotion, and the demons happened to attack her, and I happened to intervene, and during the intervention some souls happened to get searched, well, that would just be self-defense and information gathering during a combat situation. Completely justified. Nothing unorthodox about it whatsoever. Lilith stood in the forest with her seal removed, magical aura slowly leaking into the air like perfume from an uncorked bottle, staring at me with an expression that said, I was joking. I stared back with an expression that said, I wasn't. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Master, you're not seriously expecting me to. You suggested it. I was being sarcastic. Sarcasm and strategy are not mutually exclusive. She looked at the direction of the demon squad. Looked back at me. Looked at the squad again. Her survival instincts were screaming. Her desire to not disappoint her new master was also screaming. The two screams were having a screaming competition inside her skull. If I die, she said flatly, I'm haunting you. I will become the most annoying ghost in the history of the spirit realm. I will rattle chains in your ears during meditation. I will knock over your tea. I will eat your cake with my ghost mouth, and you won't be able to stop me. Noted, I said. Now go. She took a deep breath, pulled her hood down, straightened her back, and marched toward the demon squad with the dignity of a princess walking to her own execution. I followed at a comfortable distance, human emperor banner quietly humming at my hip. Prestigious Orthodox sect. Absolutely. I released Lilith's aura seal, fully expecting her to panic. What I did not expect was for her to instantly transform into the most convincing spoiled aristocrat I've ever witnessed across 2 lifetimes. The 12 demons all turned toward her at once. She had maybe half a second before terror took over. Instead, she swallowed her fear whole, plastered on a face that screamed, "Why are you peasants blocking my path?" and opened her mouth in flawless Old Demon King city accent, the kind with rolling consonants and drawn-out vowels where every syllable sounds like it took a luxury vacation on her tongue before being reluctantly released. Goodness, I just stepped out of Demon King City for some fresh air, and somehow you people are in my way. How annoying. I nearly broke character behind my concealment. That was good. The accent, the body language, the perfectly calibrated ratio of boredom to contempt. She'd weaponized every etiquette lesson her mother ever gave her. The squad leader was a scarred brute in black half-plate with a slash mark running from eyebrow to jaw. He squinted at her. Purple dress, silver hair, purple eyes, zero magical aura, no weapons. She looked exactly like what she was claiming to be, a helpless noble daughter who'd wandered too far from her carriage. The question was why a noble daughter was alone in the middle of nowhere. She told him her father was the deputy commander of the Demon King's Royal Guard. Completely fabricated. The position exists, but she had zero idea who currently holds it. If Scarface happened to know the real deputy commander, the whole act would collapse instantly. But she delivered the lie with such casual arrogance. You don't even recognize me? That Scarface actually flinched. A bespectacled demon aide sidled up and whispered something about her, noble bearing, authentic accent, and how it doesn't seem fake. Of course it doesn't seem fake. She is a demon noble. She's just not the one she's pretending to be. The best disguises are the ones closest to truth. Scarface bought it. Offered to let her travel with the squad until they finished their mission, then escort her to the front lines. Lilith, who was probably dying inside, responded with a lazy, "Fine, I suppose you'll do," nod and asked if they had any food. He gave her a chunk of field rations. She looked at the black, rock-hard brick like someone had handed her a dead insect. Is this it? No cake? Sea cake? Never mind. I'll have father send pastry chefs to the front. She bit into the ration with the expression of a princess chewing gravel and marched forward like she owned the forest. Inside, I knew she was screaming. But outside, flawless. The way she walked, light, entitled, not a single backward glance of uncertainty, was pure aristocratic programming. Half a year of running had taught her one survival skill better than any combat technique: how to pretend she wasn't terrified. I watched from concealment as she embedded herself in the demon squad, chatting about dragons with manufactured excitement, complaining about the terrain with practiced disdain, and occasionally glancing in my direction with eyes that silently shrieked, "Master, are you still there?" Scarface wasn't stupid, though. While his front half played gracious host, his back half was already dispatching someone to verify whether the Royal Guard's deputy commander actually had a daughter. Smart man. The scar on his face wasn't decorative. He'd survived enough battles to know that caution keeps you alive. But he also admitted to his aide that her accent and attitude were too authentic to fake. A noble daughter from Demon King City, even in ruin, carries that arrogance in her bones. You can't manufacture it. He was right. He just had the wrong noble daughter. I followed at a comfortable distance, completely invisible, watching my sixth disciple navigate a social minefield with nothing but wit, composure, and a childhood of court training. No combat ability, no cultivation, no weapons, just pure performance under pressure. In cultivation terms, this was a real-time Dao heart trial. Most disciples get tested through combat or meditation. Lilith was getting tested through improvised theater with a 12-demon audience, any one of whom could kill her with a sneeze. And she was passing. When she finally found a moment alone and whispered, "Master, are you there?" into the empty air, voice barely louder than a breath, I could hear the tremor underneath the bravery. I sent my response directly into her mind through divine sense. "I'm here." 2 words. But I made sure she could feel the weight behind them. The certainty, the proximity, the absolute guarantee that nothing in this forest was going to touch her while I existed. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. The grip on her ration loosened. She took another bite of that terrible brick and kept walking. Good disciple. Now I just needed these demons to lead us to the dragon, at which point I'd extract their intelligence via soul searching. Purely in self-defense, of course, should any unfortunate confrontation arise. Collect whatever souls and treasures the situation provided, have a polite conversation with the dragon about egg incubation, and possibly fight it if the conversation went poorly. Standard Tuesday in the cultivation world, really. Behind me, the human emperor banner hummed quietly at my hip. Ahead, my demon princess disciple was bonding with enemy soldiers over bad field rations while secretly terrified of everything. Wind Spirit Moon Shadow Sect. Prestigious, ancient, definitely not making this up as we go along. I sent a message into Lilith's mind. Good job. Better improvisation than your usual mouth suggests. She almost jumped for joy, but held character perfectly. Just chewed her rations slightly faster. From my hidden vantage point, she looked exactly like a hamster stuffing its cheeks. I also informed her that I'd already intercepted and hypnotized the scout Scarface, sent to verify her identity. The guy would return confirming everything. The Royal Guard Deputy Commander's only daughter, ran away from home, bad temper, loves sweets. Her chewing intensified dangerously. Through our mental link, I could feel her outrage. Why did you add bad temper and love sweets? Is that your objective assessment of me? She didn't dare say it out loud, though. Smart. Your current thoughts, I informed her. I can hear them. Her brain instantly wiped itself clean and replaced every thought with a detailed mental painting of cakes, tarts, macarons, and cream puffs. A full dessert still life. How about now? All sweets. Are you a pig? Master. I am currently playing a haughty noble lady. Could you please stop insulting me while I'm in character? Fair point. But she genuinely does eat a lot. The hypnotized scout returned on schedule, confirmed everything to Scarface. Name, Lily, age and appearance matching, famously terrible personality, recently ran away from home. Scarface relaxed, bowed formally, apologized for any rudeness. Lilith barely acknowledged him with a lazy hum that radiated 3 generations of aristocratic indifference. Then she made her move, looked around at the damp forest, the crooked trees, a squirrel baring its teeth at her from a branch, and announced, "I refuse to sleep on the ground. Build me a tent. The luxurious kind. I'm going to bed. You people do whatever you want. Find the dragon tomorrow." Scarface opened his mouth to protest. They were on an urgent mission, but the mental math was simple. Noble daughter plus deputy commander's kid plus runaway plus bad temper equals 3 characters. Don't mess with. What are you standing around for? Lilith tilted her head, purple eyes glowing with implied consequences. Should I build it myself? Scarface turned to his soldiers. Set up a tent. Sir, we only have field tents, I said. Set up a tent. I watched from concealment as a dozen demon soldiers scrambled to assemble canvas, rope, and stakes into something resembling shelter, while my disciple stood nearby humming a tune and tapping her foot like a metronome of entitlement.